Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
Hey, welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland
look
Sports
who
Show.
it is.
Yeah,
Look who it is.
it's good to be back in the chair.
I haven't seen you
Look at
forever.
here.
I haven't been here in 10 days. It's been a
long
minute.
time.
Man, you haven't
So-
seen since November.
On that note, Happy New Year to everybody, 2023.
Happy New Year,
Yeah.
Christmas.
It's great seeing the guys again. I can't wait to hear your opinions on a lot of hot topics today.
Speaking of
Very
hot,
busy show.
God.
Yeah, before we get into the show, I want to create this as a documented excuse in case there's questions
Yeah.
at the Lloyd household tonight about why Jason's ass is bright red.
He did not go to a dominatrix.
No, he did not.
As far as I know, at
He
least.
spilled his hot tea literally like 30 seconds before the show started.
Because I couldn't hear on the.
Why are
IFB.
you keeping the drink there if it's
Because-
hot? Why don't you put it right here?
Well,
We have a table.
But normally it's okay right there. I've been fighting this cough, and I reached around, and this thing fell, and it's a Yeti. You don't think it would spill?
So it's still as hot as it was to begin with. It is a Yeti.
It just burned
Are
my
you
ass.
okay?
I'll make it.
You'll make it.
His
So
whole
J.
lo-
Lloyd playing hurt today.
Whole lower body's red. And let me find out you was on Tinder, Jason.
So that's the excuse. That's the reason
He
we
did
all
just say he
witnessed
did
it.
a reach around. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
I don't know anything about a reach around. I don't know anything about what's going on over there, but I hope
Early.
you're all right. Busy show. Obviously, a lot to get into off the news last night of the Damar Hamlin tragic situation. We're going to try to update you as best we can on that and also get into perhaps, and you never want to speculate in these situations because that's the last thing you want to do, but there is some evidence pointing towards what happened and how it happened, and we're going to dive into that. We have, I think, the guy in Cleveland to come on and talk about this. Formerly the physician with the Cleveland Browns, now he's with the Cavaliers. He's the head of the concussion center for the Cleveland Clinic, but don't mistake it. He's certainly qualified to talk about this issue, which clearly was not a head injury. We're going to get to that. Aditi knows Damar Hamlin from his days at Pitt. She has spent time around him. She's going to join us in the noon hour to talk a little bit about her remembrances of Damar, what kind of guy he was, and perhaps was when she knew him.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I was like,
Yeah, I know.
did I?
And
Did I miss something?
That was the fear last night. I mean, it really
Yeah.
was a legitimate fear. We'll get into all that.
And by the
Also-
way, it's, I feel like, I want to be careful with what I
You're
say
going to
here.
preface this, right?
yeah, because it's going to be mistook the
But
wrong way.
I'm going to say it anyway.
Go ahead,
Like,
go ahead.
Obviously, what happened on the field was scary and shocking, and we're all thinking about it.
Right.
But if we laugh about another subject or we talk about Donovan Mitchell having a historic night, that doesn't mean we don't care.
No, absolutely.
Obviously, and it's unfair. I know Serena Winters of the Cavs people were ripping her on Twitter because she's tweeting. First of all, she's
That's her
not
job.
reading Twitter.
And she's not even aware of what's going on.
She's not
in
aware
the
of what's
NFL
going
game.
on. She's covering
Yeah.
the game. So people, don't be idiots. Obviously, everybody cares. You don't want to say stupid things like somebody did on Twitter and a couple of people. But, like, for the most part, we all care, of course. Doesn't mean we can't still smile about other things and laugh about other
It's a
subjects.
sensitive line. It moves
Of
all the
course.
time.
I was
Yeah.
conflicted at the.
Well,
I
you
was-
were at the game,
I
so
was
you
at
were
the game.
on our text chain saying,
Yeah.
I'm at the game. I really don't know what's going on.
I was tweeting about our fantasy football score, what was
Right.
going on.
Right.
I didn't know.
And
Yes.
the funny thing is, like, at one point last night in the coverage, Scott Van Pelt, who I thought did an amazing job
Yeah.
on SportsCenter, mentioned that, or maybe it was Ryan Clark, who's a buddy of mine, and I was communicating with him
He did a
last
great
night
job
and this
yesterday.
morning.
He was wonderful.
For me, he was the voice.
Yeah.
And we can get into why a little bit later. But somebody said this isn't just a sports story, it's a news story. And then at one point, I think Ryan Clark said, this is everybody in the world is watching this. That's not true.
Right.
Sometimes we're the center of our own universe, and I think last night is a perfect example of that. Serena Winters has no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
None, nor should she. She's
No.
doing her job.
Right.
And once I found out, I still was tweeting about the Cavs because Donovan Mitchell's having a historic night.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to ignore a man scoring 71
can't.
points?
Right, you can't.
You know
It
what
doesn't
I mean?
mean you don't care. It
that's
means
your-
there's other things going
I
on.
think sometimes people forget that, like, this is your job. It's not like yes, we are regular, but no, we're not regular. We tweet about things that is part of your job. That is a story. That is a story. You can cover both of them, but to make it seem like you're some less plugged in person, or you don't have the emotions
or
to get to
insensitive.
Yeah,
That was I saw a lot of claims last night. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Look, it is a sensitive subject.
Of course.
Obviously, I'm glad you brought that up because, there were some egregious tweets that I saw.
Yeah.
And I don't even think we need to get into those because why would we pay them any mind or attention at all?
Right.
But for the most part, those that were tweeting about other things, many of them had no idea what was going on.
Of course not. It's just people looking for something
And
to
it
get
was,
angry about.
you can make the case this was the game of the regular season.
I mean,
going into last night, it felt like the biggest game of the regular season.
It was because the crowd, I know, I spoke to a couple of people who were at the game who said it was the loudest they'd ever heard that stadium.
It felt that way on TV.
The place was just rocking, and then the Bengals went down the field, then the Bills went down the field, then the Bengals were going on, and then all of a sudden, dead silence.
Yeah.
And at first when he gets hurt, I think we all thought, because we didn't see him collapse right away, because once they showed you in the replay, you're like, okay, this is not normal.
Yeah.
But at first, you're thinking, okay, he hurt his knee or
I think
whatever
it
it was.
Code red for me when they showed the cutaway of Josh Allen. I was watching with my wife, and I said, I'm afraid this player isn't going to survive.
Right.
That's what someone looks like when they're watching someone lose their life. It was a horrific. It wasn't
awful.
A spinal injury or no movement. It was what you look like when you're watching a man who is not breathing take emergency CPR. And that's, as it turned out, that's exactly what Josh Allen was looking at when we saw that horrific shot. We're going to get into all of that.
Yeah.
Also, we are going to talk about Deshaun Watson's second half against the Commanders. Is this the real Deshaun Watson? Did he do that against I don't want to say inferior defense, but I don't think it's one of the NFL's elite defenses. But we're going to talk about what that meant moving forward. And also, we haven't all given our thoughts yet on the Georgia-Ohio State game and the now subsequent championship matchup, Georgia-TCU, which is exciting absolutely nobody nationwide. We'll talk about that in greater detail. But first, we begin with Damar Hamlin. We've talked about it a little bit. If you weren't watching last night or you haven't heard what happened, at about the 6-minute mark in the first quarter, with the Bengals leading 7-3 and driving against the Bills on Monday Night Football, Tee Higgins collided with Damar Hamlin. It was a serious collision.
Hamlin took the worst of that blow.
He unquestionably did.
I was like, because
Tee had more speed.
Yeah, watching the game, I was like, I was like pumped up because obviously I didn't know he was hurt.
Sure.
And I was like, I love seeing a receiver go in, like make the and he's a big guy, Tee Higgins, too.
Yeah.
And
but it wasn't a hit we haven't seen 1,000 times.
No,
it was 1,000% clean.
Yes.
T. Higgins was doing his job.
People were giving him death threats.
Hamlin, I know, that's
What's
insane.
wrong with people?
Hamlin was doing his job.
Yes,
unfortunately, it led to a situation where Hamlin went down on the field, and I know the broadcasters were doing the best they could in that moment.
It was a really tough spot.
It was a really tough spot. And it was, I think, the one thing they drove home, not just Aikman and Buck, but also everybody that was speaking on ESPN afterwards, including Adam Schefter and Ryan Clark. This is something that none of us has ever seen.
Right.
Schefter made a great point. Every player and coach that's on that field right now is watching something that they have never seen before. Yeah. They were watching a man essentially lying lifeless on the field that moments earlier the biggest game of the regular season was taking place. So what happens is there's frantic efforts to get a pulse from Hamlin. They were conducting CPR. At one point, Joe Buck, who could see everything. So when you're doing a game like that, you do have access to different feeds. And Scott Van Pelt talked about this. You can see other cameras, not just the program monitor. You can see other cameras. And he was seeing things that we were not. So I want to make that clear. Those that had access to those cameras, Scott Van Pelt and specifically Joe Buck, were speaking about things they saw on feed cameras that we weren't seeing. Mm-hmm. Buck had said at one point that CPR was being administered for, quote, many, many minutes. And that's when it really became fearful to me. My next door neighbor is Dr. Jim Williams, who was a physician with the Indians for a long time. He's since retired. We were speaking on the phone. His fear was my fear. When I was living in New Jersey, my son was playing Little League there. There was a young man who was hit in the chest with a batted ball. And it was the first time I'd ever been made aware of this condition, which has a name. It's actually what happens when you are hit when the heart is between beats, when the heart is paused. It's not It's not beating, it's contracting, and it's in between beats.
Commotio cordis.
That's it. You got it right. I didn't even attempt to pronounce it
Yeah.
because I was afraid I would mispronounce it. I knew of that condition back when I was coaching my son in New Jersey Little League. This young man died on the field. And as a result of that, all New Jersey Little Leagues passed a law where there had to be the defib unit on site just in the rare event. And you're talking about a 1 in a million, probably more than that, where this happens. When I was talking to Dr. Williams, we were both saying the same thing. It has to happen in the exact right spot at the exact right time. And I later thought about it. No, it's the exact wrong spot at the exact wrong time. It looks like that's what happened. Again, we don't know.
The report from the Bills said that he was revived quickly.
That's my question is how quickly? Because Dr. Williams reminded me this morning that at 4 minutes, you begin suffering brain damage.
He was apparently in stable condition in the hospital.
Critical.
But critical.
Critical.
But he was he's sedated.
Right.
So, I mean, here's the statement from the Bills.
So we don't know. It just says his heartbeat was restored on the field. What was the time frame?
Right.
I go back to Joe Buck's comment that they were performing CPR for many, many minutes.
Right. But I don't think it was one thing I took as a good sign, not knowing anything. Obviously, none of us are doctors. But one thing I took as a good sign is when they reported, might have been Ben Baby, who we've had on, I can't remember who reported it first, that the ambulance was waiting for his mom, who was in the crowd. And so my assumption was, I don't know if this is a fair assumption or not, it seems like it would be, is that if they were able to not take him to the hospital immediately and wait for his mom, that they probably thought he was, like, it wasn't life or death in that moment.
I agree with you,
right?
and that was my thought exactly. When I heard Ben's report that they were waiting for Damar's mother, who was in the stands, if you could imagine the horror of that entire
But good
moment.
that she's with him.
Great that she's with him, but can you imagine?
I cannot.
I mean, you can't. There's 106 players in uniform down there.
Yeah.
The odds that something like this would happen to your son and you're in, it's just unthinkable.
Beyond awful.
It's beyond awful. But I thought the same thing, Bull. I thought that because he must have been stabilized. Now, obviously, they have life-sustaining equipment inside that ambulance, so most things that would be available to him at the hospital, they were probably able to administer there. We don't know the timeline other than this. He fell at 8:55. He was transported from the stadium to the hospital at 9:25. That's a span, obviously, of 30 minutes. And then we later heard that he was in critical condition. We're not a doctor, and it is dangerous what we're doing. And I apologize for that, because the one thing that I told myself coming in this morning is we have to stick with what we know. We can't speculate. I saw a lot of doctors last night speculating. I sent the group a YouTube video of a doctor explaining the condition that we spoke of, what happens in that condition. He had graphics and everything to show exactly how you go into this situation. Now, somebody who covers soccer sent me a message last night. I haven't been able to verify this, so I don't want to give the player's name, but told me of a condition of a soccer player.
Christian Eriksen.
That's exactly it. Were you able to confirm that? Because I didn't want to mention the name if I was not able to confirm
if it was the same syndrome, but the situation was very similar. He just collapsed in the middle of a game.
Went down.
Heart stopped. They did CPR in the field, took him back, and he's back playing now.
He is. Now, I don't know if that was from a trauma event to the chest.
Well, there was an incident like this with a hockey player whose name is now escaping me, like 20 years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And he just collapsed on the ice. And he
bizarrely came to my mind last night. I don't know if you guys remember this. You may, because you're a huge baseball fan. I believe it was around in the 90s when
the umpire, John Cherry,
at
opening day in Cincinnati.
And they kept playing the game.
And that was when Cincinnati was the national opening day game. So many people were watching.
It was the first inning. He started to walk towards the dugout.
He took a step and he went face first down, and everybody that was watching that immediately knew what was going on. And Cherry was a big man. He's only, I think, 50, or in his early 50s. He went down, and that's what came to mind for me. It was obviously a massive heart attack. He did not survive. That's what came to mind to me. And the other thing that came to mind to me, which is another bizarre Cincinnati tie-in, was that's the same field that we watched Tua suffer his trauma earlier this season.
Right.
And Shazier as well, right?
Ryan Shazier as well. Exactly. You're right. That was at Cincinnati. So a lot of bizarre coincidences. McNuggets, if you will, let me know when we have Dr. Figler on.
I will. By the way, Christian Eriksen, it just says he had a cardiac arrest.
Okay, so I wasn't.
That's all.
That's why I didn't want to go with that. But it was told to me that a similar situation. I didn't have the time to look into it, so I didn't want to say for sure. I think his was not trauma related. He just went down with a cardiac incident.
It was he was walking.
The NFL's been highly criticized for how they handled this.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that because some of that's fair, but I think a lot of it's unfair. I noticed this morning that Troy Vincent, who is management with the NFL, was very, very quick, and I knew that this was coming. When Scott kept reiterating the 5-minute point last night, I kept saying, commissioners on line 1 to the control room because you don't.
I'm not buying that they weren't doing that.
I don't know, and I think the one thing that if I would have been able to talk to Scott in that moment, I would have said I would go less heavy on that point. In case you're wondering what we're talking about, during the broadcast, Joe Buck had said each team has been told to gather themselves, take 5 minutes before we resume play. I don't know where that came from. Joe didn't source it. I'm assuming that someone told Joe that that's the case. Joe didn't pull that out of thin air. He didn't pull that out of thin air.
I don't buy the league.
I don't trust me.
Yeah.
There's 2 time frames that these parents are looking at. One is the 5-minute rule.
Yeah.
The second thing is, how long did it take before they decided to go to the hospital, and why did they wait for his mother?
Well, that's a medical thing. That's not an NFL thing.
Well, here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because if right now he's in critical, Lord forbid any of that. But when you start having these timelines, if anything goes down, if he is not able to play anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why wasn't he immediately transported?
They're going.
The fact that you would want his mother to be with him is, but that to me is why your thought exactly was mine. Well, he must be stabilized.
Right. To me, that has nothing to do with the NFL. That's a doctor's thing.
Yeah.
The NFL's decision
to wait
about whether they were going to play or not.
I think we need to give credit to Coach Taylor. I don't know.
Both coaches showed great leadership.
But I thought Zach Taylor did something last night that spoke to me in the vein of sportsmanship and how we put so much on every play. And this is last night, beginning at 8:55, the Bengals and the Bills were on the same team. And I don't think I've ever seen an incident like this where the sportsmanship was just jumping off the screen at you.
Yeah.
The images to me that jump out was Joe Burrow consoling a obviously rattled Josh Allen.
Yeah.
When Zach Taylor, because they showed shots of Stephon Diggs rallying the troops.
Right.
And at that
they
point,
thought they were going to play. It's crazy.
They are not going to restart this game. But to me, the competitor took over in Diggs, who also was clearly rattled with tears on his face. When they took that shot, I thought, my God, they're planning to resume this game.
I've never seen a game. This is crazy. I've never, since I was a little kid, Pop Warner, middle school, junior high, I've never seen a game canceled because of injury.
No.
Even if there was even if it was serious spinal cord injuries, or guys are not moving, couldn't give a thumbs up.
And we've seen many players taken off the field that were immobile.
They had to take it out of Madden, because in Madden they used to bring like if you're playing a game, somebody get hurt, they used to bring the ambulance on the field, take them off, and you start playing again.
Yeah.
They had to take that out of the game because they felt that was insensitive. But for football players, for a certain extent, all of what you do, you play whether it's raining, whether it's snow. We don't cancel games. It's almost like it's been indoctrinated into your DNA that it don't matter what happened, you gonna play.
You're
By
right.
the way, the first
and
time
Ryan Clark said that too.
The first time I ever did play-by-play, I was like working for a community college radio station. I was like 22 years old, and I was calling a high school football game, and the coach had, I think we thought it was a heart attack. Turned out not to be, but he had to be taken away. And this was the head coach of one of the high school football teams, and they just kept playing.
Yeah,
Crazy.
it is unprecedented now.
Yeah.
It also should be pointed out that we've never seen a situation like this before.
Nothing.
We have seen spinal injuries, but even in that case, in the vast majority, they end up okay. We've seen players paralyzed on the field of play. It's happened that I can think of a number of times, going all the way back to Darryl Stingley.
The guy on the Jets.
Steve Bird.
Yeah,
Dennis
thumbs
Bird.
up.
Dennis Bird.
The Rutgers player.
There's been a lot of players.
Forgot his name. He speaks now.
He's
a good friend of my son.
He's still, I think he's still in a wheelchair, correct?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
No movement from the
LeGrand.
legs down.
Eric LeGrand, yeah.
We've seen that, but the reason this was water that we'd never traveled in before was because we were watching teammates and opposing players watch a man lying lifeless on the field before. And to my knowledge, that's never happened. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I've never, I know Adam Schefter talked at length last night. He couldn't find an incident before where a player's heart had stopped on the field. And that clearly was the case. They were administering CPR.
I mean, Hank gathers, but that was obviously natural.
It was,
it was its own. He had heart conditions.
he wasn't
that we
pronounced
knew of.
dead until they took him to Loyola. I mean, he didn't die on the playing surface.
Usually the player gives, no matter how bad the injury, the player gives the thumbs up.
And you feel better.
Everybody cheers.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's
okay,
kind of the sign,
That-
get back to work.
we can play.
And that is kind of crazy. That's an unofficial sign that the player does that says, "Hey guys, I'm cool. Y'all can go ahead and play now."
Right, it is. That's
no
what
matter
that
how
means.
serious the injury
And I think
is.
Bird was the first one ever to do that.
Right, but no matter how serious the injury is, there's always the thumbs up, and then everybody's like, okay,
Yeah.
at least he's going to be
And we were
okay
waiting
on
for
some
some
level.
of that. And I think at some point last night, I think if there had been definitive word from the rescue crew that we have a heartbeat, all of his vitals are stable
He's
and
awake.
normal.
Yeah.
He's awake. We're going to transport him and keep an eye on him just for safe, just to be sure.
Then you could have
I
played.
think they probably would have
Yes.
resumed play. And I do think that we can't dismiss the fact that this was a monumental game with humongous implications.
Yeah.
Actually, you can take it all the way to who wins this year's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because home field advantage, we know how critical that is. Buffalo is fighting for that. Buffalo has beaten Kansas City. Kansas City's watching all this saying, what are we going to do?
The Bengals and Bills are both still alive for the 1 seed.
They are. And the Chiefs are still in the mix.
Right.
So there are a lot of implications. At this point, this is the year of the decision for the NFL because I thought prior to this, the Deshaun Watson decision was, to me, one of the most closely watched decisions the league has ever made. Everybody was watching, and there was a huge stake in the game. I think that this is bigger.
Yes.
Because of what it means to
From
the
a
playoffs.
football
And there's a man's
standpoint,
life
yes.
that's hanging in the balance. And I don't know that the NFL can make a definitively right decision.
No.
No matter what they do, they're going to be criticized roundly.
Let me throw out my idea. Tell me what you guys think.
I liked your idea, by the way, and I haven't heard anybody else mention it.
This is what I think they should do. Now, this is assuming the guy is alive.
Right.
If he dies, then everything could go out the window. I don't know what's going to happen. But let's hope for the best in that he's at least awake and recovering at some point this week. What I think the league should do from a football standpoint is push the entire season.
Okay.
You didn't hear? Okay.
I thought you were going to say the tie because initially when you said call this game a tie, I thought that's absurd.
No.
But the more I started thinking about it, the
No.
12th tiebreaker, which may come into play here, is a coin flip.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to flip a coin.
No. Here's what I think they should do because I feel like from a football standpoint, you want to play the game.
You do.
Right? So what I think they should do is take the last week of the regular season, which is week 18.
Right.
And move it and the entire postseason back a week except for the Super Bowl. Remember, there's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You could go 1 week.
You
They've
could
done
condense
it before.
that. That used to be, there were seasons where there was just a week.
That's right. Move everything back a week. Next weekend, you give everybody the weekend off. You play the Bills and Bengals only next Monday night.
Okay, I think that is the best scenario I've heard.
I don't know what else you do.
Jay, do you like that? I mean, it's not ideal, but
it's not ideal.
It's the best option I've heard
Yes.
because, quite frankly, the coin flip. I read some things online this morning where they talk about, if in the event a game cannot have a final result, the 12th tiebreaker comes down to a coin flip.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants that.
Right.
That is doable. You could not move the date of the Super Bowl at this point.
No,
Now,
but
the other thing is hotel rooms are still booked for the AFC and NFC championship.
I get it, but
those weekends would change. It does become a
it's
logistical
tricky,
nightmare.
But you don't have to
perhaps.
change the Super Bowl, and then you get the game in.
We'll talk more about that later in the program. Right now, I want to bring in Dr. Richard Figler. He's the guest that I mentioned at the top of the show, would be joining us to talk about this. Dr. Figler is the director of the Cleveland Clinic Concussion Center. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I want to get your immediate reaction to what you were thinking as you were watching all of this unfold last night.
Yeah, so started getting the phone started blowing up pretty quickly as I was covering the Cavs game, and it was, kind of eerie looking at it. This is what we prepare for, being in sports medicine. We want to make sure that the athletes are taken care of during these catastrophic or potentially catastrophic events. The first thing I thought of was, were they doing everything correctly? And My hat's off to everyone out there that covers these games, because it's a vital part of what we do out there, and it looks like things were done 100% appropriately. They got out, they identified what was going on right away, and they started treatment immediately. And we know that when people get treated immediately for these kind of issues, the outcomes are significantly better. And that's been educational moments, not just at the Cleveland Clinic, where we have a catastrophic injury course before every season. This is, I think, our 11th year of doing it. And we've had emergency action plans that have been on part of our every arena, every facility, to make sure that everyone is prepped and ready to go in case this happens. It looks like they were ready, and again, my hat's off to the medical team for taking care, and thoughts and prayers obviously out to his family and him to make a speedy recovery. If I don't know all the details obviously about it, but the hope is that with that early intervention, things get better. Before the advent of defibrillators and the education about CPR, depending on what it is, from a cardiac standpoint, if this is truly cardiac, the outcomes were not nearly as favorable as they can be with the appropriate early treatment.
Doc,
go ahead.
Doc, when you see the ambulance waiting in the tunnel for his mom to come, I just, as a non-doctor, was like, oh, that must be a good sign that they don't have to rush him to the hospital. They can wait for his mom. What did you, I don't know if you'd heard about that part. What do you make of that? Is that a safe assumption to make, that it's a good sign that they were able to wait for his mother?
Yeah, so more than likely that, it wasn't an emergent situation. So there's all these things that go off in our head when these things happen. Like, what is the most likely cause of the athlete falling down? On the football field, as you guys have probably talked about, it's concussion. But when something happens the way that it happens, we have to think cardiac, and make sure that we act on that appropriately. So in my mind, the fact that they waited for his mom to come in and say something and see him, I think it's a good sign that he was stabilized enough where they had that time to say, okay, we don't have to rush him into the operating room right away. And I'm sorry, I've been in clinic all morning, so I don't know, but I haven't heard anything from a standpoint of he's gone to surgery or anything like that, which would make us think that this is not something that would need to have surgical intervention on right away, which is
we
also
know
positive.
that we know of, Doctor. There have been no updates this morning, and I know at one point the hospital had said that it was unlikely that they would give an update early this morning. It's now approaching noon, and we still haven't heard anything definitive on the situation. The last word, he was in critical condition. I know that we don't want to speculate as to exactly what the condition was, but I know that there were a lot of folks in the medical community that were theorizing that because of the kind of hit he took, it was a dramatic blow to the sternum area. A lot of folks were speculating that perhaps this is that rare and untimely condition where there is a traumatic event to the heart while it's between beats. What can you tell us about that? And if that is what happened, in your experience, what is the likelihood of a full recovery from that if it indeed is what happened?
So, I'll be honest with you. The first thing I said when one of my partners showed me the video, as I said, well, that looks like it's commotio cordis, which is what you're talking about. So as the heart is kind of repolarizing, it's kind of re-energizing its electricity to beat again. That's when it's a very small window of about 10 to 30 milliseconds in that process that this event can potentially happen. Usually happens in younger people. We see it, and it's commonly known in baseball players, getting hit in the chest with a baseball, especially pitchers. And it's a very, like you mentioned, untimely process. So it has to be the right angle of impact. It has to be the right vector, and then it has to kind of set off this cascade where the heart goes into an abnormal rhythm, because it kind of it disrupts the rhythm, and we go into something called ventricular fibrillation, which is why, from what I understand, they shocked him at the time, and it's a very what we call a shockable rhythm that can be helped out. What we do know is with it's one, as you mentioned, very rare event, right? If you look at all the NCAA data, they've collected NCAA data over the course of the last 20 or so years, and it accounts for about 2% of the sudden cardiac deaths that happen in NCAA athletes, which is not a big number to start off with. It's probably like 1 or 2 in the past 10 or 15 years. So even though it's a rare event, it's something that we think about when there's a blow to the chest. And watching the video, it would make sense that he felt good enough to come up, but then when the blood's not pumping to your brain tells you, hey, okay, we got to lay down to get the blood back up to our brain and get things rolling again. And that's more than likely what happened to him when he fell back down. So what saves lives in these instances are automatic external defibrillators, the AEDs. And the fact that they had that on him within minutes, we know that within 3 minutes or so, the survivability goes up significantly. After 3 minutes, it goes down significantly. So, starting CPR, getting the blood up to the brain, getting the blood to the vital organs, those are things that, you don't have the luxury if you're sitting in your living room and this happens to you, if you pass out, or if it happens when you're on a walk or a jog in the park. This immediate access that they have, and again, I can't stress enough, the plans that are in place, across football fields, whether it's high school, college, wherever it is, where we're covering those games. This is why we prepare for this stuff, to make sure that it's done as quickly as possible, because we say time is heart muscle, time is myocardium. We want to make sure that we preserve as much as we can. And again, the rest of it, like you mentioned, is speculation as to how he's going to recover from this. But knowing that he got what he needed as soon as he got it is a great sign that they're giving him the best opportunity moving forward.
So, Doc, what is the treatment from this point forward? Is it just the body recovering itself, or what do you do from this point forward now?
Yeah, so a lot of that's speculation because we don't know exactly what caused it, right? So let's say that it is commotio cordis. It depends on what other organs may have been irritated or damaged during the event. And again, 100% speculation. Did he get enough blood to his brain? Based on CPR, typically that's okay. That's what it is. Could he have had something else going on that we're not even aware of? We're talking about the speculation of commotio cordis, but could he have had something going on with his aorta? Could he have been sick before this and had a potential for viral myocarditis or an inflammation of the heart or an effusion or swelling around the heart, which could be caused by some viruses? So we don't know the answer to a lot of those questions. So again, it's speculative, but it comes down to, is he in a normal rhythm, which from what I understand, I've read that he is in a normal rhythm. And then, how much damage was done to his heart muscles during that time. So when he goes in the hospital, control his bleeding, sedate him, get his heart rate under control. They check enzymes for his heart to make sure that the heart enzymes aren't, when you have a heart attack, we check heart enzymes, but they can get damaged during this as well. And we monitor the sequence of, and the elevation or decreasing of those heart enzymes as he's getting better, which is, and monitoring his vital signs, et cetera, just to make sure that, all things are taken care of. And you know that whoever's taking care of him is doing a great job, because not just because of who he is, but just because that's what we do, right?
Doctor, really quickly, is this injury preventable?
Is it preventable? It's a great question. So when we first started knowing about this years and years ago, they did a lot of studies on how to protect the athlete. One, it's a timing thing that's really bad luck. But yes, we've seen chest protectors that have been put on athletes that are at higher risk, especially, like I mentioned, baseball players, which is where we see the majority of commotio cordis. Again, speculating that this could be that. So when you say, is this preventable, the question is, what is preventable? So when we look at just sudden cardiac events, so not sudden cardiac death, but sudden cardiac events where somebody goes down and we think that it's from a cardiac event, the thing that we have found to be the most preventable is education. So having people around you that know how to do CPR, an emergency action plan that utilizes the AED to get somebody from an abnormal heart rhythm that could be fatal out of that abnormal heart rhythm into a normal heart rhythm that is more sustainable with a better outcome. And so when you say preventable, the answer to that is probably not. The question is how do we prevent a more catastrophic outcome? And that is with the education, the CPR, the AEDs, and quick action when those events happen.
Doc, when you in the release it said he was sedated, he was stable. You talk about his heartbeat being normal. You said right, and when he's sedated, what does that mean exactly? Like, we've all heard the word, but what does that mean when a guy is sedated? Is he completely out? Is he just in a fog? Like, what exactly is his condition right now? Well,
so without knowing the specifics of it, the chances are is when he was put into, if he was intubated, they sedate him so they can control the breathing, right? So there's a bunch of different sedations. There's sedation where you're kind of in a twilight zone, but there's also sedation where you're completely knocked out, so we can kind of control everything. So we know that there's less stress on the body because you're not really fighting, so to speak, because you're in a restful state. So if he was intubated, the chances are, with the tube down his throat, if he's awake, he's going to try to pull it out. So the chances are is if he was sedated because he was intubated, it was to protect his airway and get control of the breathing, calm the heart rate down, et cetera. So, again, hard to say, but in the event that this could potentially happen, my assumption is that if he was sedated, he was probably intubated at the same time.
Well, Doctor, just great information. I know we put you in a difficult spot. We're asking you to talk about a condition that we don't even know is officially.
That's all right.
But I thought you navigated it very, very well. Go ahead, Jace.
I'm just wondering, Doc, what would you put the percentage? I hate to put it that way, but in your expert opinion, is that what we're dealing with?
Percentage in what percent?
The
commotio cordis?
Yeah.
So
what else could it be? I guess is what I'm asking.
So I think the again, completely speculative, right? Playing,
Sure.
Monday morning quarterback. So if I were to say, based on the events, based on the video, based on what we looked at, it's kind of similar to when we see other ankle injuries. Like, okay, well, that's an ankle sprain. You see ankle sprains that people have seen the bottom of their foot and they're out for 3 months. You see ankle sprains that people walk it off and they don't miss a beat. So you can kind of project some of that when you look at the video. Based on the video, I would say it's a very high likelihood that it's commotio cordis. And without knowing any other history, then I would become more speculative. And this is where the brain goes into this kind of what we call a differential diagnosis, a secondary diagnosis of, okay, well, if it's not that, then what is it, right? So other things that could potentially happen. There are people that have unknown to them what are called ion channelopathies, where for whatever reason there's an excitation in the heart that the cells just don't conduct normally. And you may never see that at all when they're going throughout their daily activities, their strenuous exercise, they're lifting, they're playing, et cetera, that they more succumb to that. That is typically during heavy exertional exercise, not with a blow to the chest and then that. Other things that can happen is, I mentioned the viral myocarditis, and we're not talking about, necessarily COVID. You can get it from other viruses as well, but you could have an inflammation of the heart that kind of sets it up to be a little bit more inflamed and a little bit more irritated, where a hit like that could potentially cause an abnormal rhythm. You could have, with that, a little bit of fluid around the heart. The heart is covered in a sac, and sometimes a little bit of fluid can develop around that area if they did get an inflammation around the heart. Again, speculative, but that could cause a little bit more excitation. There's something called an aortic dissection, that where the aorta, which is the main artery that comes off the heart, can kind of tear a little bit. But I would not have expected them to stop for his mom if that were the case. I would have expected them to be like rushing to the OR right away if that were the case, or at least an area where he could get that taken care of right away. So those are all the things that kind of went through my mind when we were thinking, what else could this potentially be? I don't think it's a concussion. I don't think it's anything, along that lines. I didn't see it. I mean, again, I wasn't watching the game, but I don't know if we get hit in the head earlier or anything like that. In all honesty, you don't get CPR when you have you don't get shocked if you have a concussion.
Right. Doctor, one last question before we let you go. The one thing that I've noticed about the players' equipment over the last 3 or 4 years, particularly this season, has really jumped out at me, is how much smaller the shoulder pads are that these players are wearing. In some instances, it looks like these guys are playing with no shoulder pads at all. I'm wondering, I know you said it's not preventable, but I'm familiar with the piece of equipment, the chest plate that is a strap-on for pitchers to wear. Would it reduce the likelihood of this happening if that padding over the sternum area was thicker? Or is it still going to happen if there is that traumatic event to the exact wrong spot at the exact wrong time?
Yeah, I think that last part is probably what, it'd be. I don't think that it's hard to say, right? We know that this happens in younger kids more so than older kids. We think it's because of physical maturity and the extra pec muscle that they get over the course of time that acts as a little bit more of a protector, and the bones get a little bit firmer as well. The padding, obviously, for most of shoulder pads, they become smaller and lighter because the materials have become stronger and lighter as well. So they're able to wear these, and they feel like they're a little bit more protective than the cardiac kids back in the 70s or in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about the materials and everything that are in there, even the foam is different from a compression standpoint. I think that's going to lead to a lot of potential speculation, but I think I said that word like 8 times in the past 15 minutes. But
that's what we're doing.
But from a standpoint of being protective, the equipment continues to evolve over the course of time based on injury patterns, based on what we see in the field and things that are more common, right? You remember the skull caps that guys were wearing during two-a-days to try to prevent the risk of concussions. Look at the helmets from 5 years ago to now, and how much they've changed, and how different people wearing different helmets based on positional. And so a lot of the technology that has gone into that is based on injury patterns that we see. This is a rare event, and like you said at the end, this is wrong place, wrong time, wrong everything, and it's a hopefully a better outcome than what we hope it's a great outcome based on what we know was available for him at the time. The AED, the CPR, and immediate response with the medical personnel to get him in the right place for the right things.
Doctor, thank you very much. Dr.
Welcome.
Williams told me last night you'd be the perfect guy for this job. He was absolutely right. You nailed it. Tough spot.
I appreciate it. He's a great guy, but I didn't pay him any money to say that either. I'm glad my mom didn't call in during the show either.
Doctor, be well. Thank you again very much. We appreciate it. Just to show you, I reached out to Dr. Figler last night while the Cavs game was in overtime, knowing he was very busy. He's the Cavs physician.
Yeah.
But Dr. Williams assured me he's a great guy. He is the guy you want on this topic.
And by the way,
Speaking of that Cavs
we did
game.
Busy watching Donovan Mitchell
Right,
for 71.
right.
Yeah.
But by the way, who has a doctor like that on like at 11 o'clock? He was busy.
Yeah.
Like, we're the first two to break it down like that. Shout out to him.
Yeah,
for
well,
coming on.
the Cleveland Clinic helped because I also emailed Grant over at the clinic to try to, just to go through the proper channels.
Right.
But they jumped through hoops to make him available for us this morning. We're very glad he did. I think we're all a little smarter on what happened last night. And I actually feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
To the aortic dissection that he spoke of, Dr. Williams told me the same thing. Like, if it was an aortic dissection, even if it wasn't a full dissection but just a tear, they would have had him to the hospital within minutes.
Right. So it seems like they did everything
and that
right.
is surgery. That's immediate surgery.
Immediate surgery, and it doesn't always save your life.
Right.
I mean, the brain damage occurs at about the 4-minute mark once it's without oxygen.
Well,
the fact that they had the AED, that he was being defibrillated on the field,
right?
I think, and he also, during our text exchange this morning, he told me something that was incredible that I never knew, and it's something to watch for in the future when these kinds of things happen. He's stadium response, and Doc Williams, my neighbor, was stadium response, and Doc Figler was formerly with the Browns, now he's with the Cavs. He was telling me that they think of everything that could possibly go wrong in these situations. So the doctors all have, the team medical physicians all have radios with them. If in the event the radio communication fails, there are hand signals that they can use, that they can communicate things that are going on between them and perhaps the ambulance crew or other medical personnel. This is something that a great deal of time, thought, and energy has gone into this protocol.
Right.
And I think what we witnessed last night, and he said himself, he thinks everything was done properly. The hope is that it was. This man regains full function, and it's not outside the realm. I've had other doctors tell me this morning that I was asking questions, again, speculative, but is this potentially career-ending? And no one seemed to think that it was, provided he survives and there was no heart damage. The likelihood of this happening again to him is the same as it is to happening to every other player, which is 1 in a million. How many hits have we seen?
Yeah. Well, unless he has some condition.
Unless there was some damage done to his heart.
Right.
We don't know that yet, but we'll
Right.
probably know more later in the day. So, again, thanks.
Yeah.
Big shout out to the Cleveland Clinic and to Dr. Figler. And we transition to that Cavaliers game because I've never been in a spot in my fandom before where I was so conflicted on what I wanted to watch. That's why I'm obviously with 2 screens, you can do 2 things at once. But as dialed in as I was to the injury situation, I'm watching the Cavs game, thinking at one point, by the way, with about 40 seconds to go, this is an L. And this is a bad L.
Well, they were awful in the first
They
half.
were not good. But watching what Donovan Mitchell did and the putback on the missed free throw with 3 seconds to go may go down as, and I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, and I also know that the Kyrie 3 and the LeBron block in the grand pantheon of Cleveland sports meant much more.
Yeah.
But in the single snapshot
I'll do
of
that
a
for you.
moment.
I'll knee-jerk for
Yeah,
you.
because you are the Duke of knee-jerk.
Yes.
But what was amazing, I can't remember, it felt like Rajay Davis because all it did was tie the game.
Yeah.
That was it. But you quickly could sense that there was no way when that game got to overtime that team was going to lose.
Yeah,
and they
no
carried
chance.
that momentum. Jason, what in the hell was it like being in the arena for that game last night?
Absolutely remarkable because, I mean, I was in San Antonio when Kyrie scored 57 against the Spurs. And that's the Spurs. Like, Pop don't let anybody score 57 on you. And I saw him drop 55 on, I think it was Portland.
Yep.
Donovan scored 55 after halftime. After halftime, he scored 55 last night. Because I was there for pregame, and then I left. I actually had to come here. I came to Channel 3 and shot a thing with Jim Donovan for the 7 o'clock news. Went back to the arena, had a story I had to finish that was running today on Mike Brown. So it was probably 8 o'clock before I even got into the bowl. And I think he had like 30 or 40 when I sat down and thought, oh, okay, Donovan's having a pretty good night. So then you just watch Donovan. For me, I'm watching Donovan at that point, not even sure if I'm going to write or not because I just missed half the game.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I was there for the most important
Yeah,
part.
you saw it all.
By the way, there was part of me in overtime that I wanted the game to go to double overtime more than the Cavs to
So
win.
he
just
could get more than
score
81.
points.
I thought if it goes to double overtime, but that option was quickly off the table.
Yeah.
But I thought the same thing you did. I
Yeah.
said, you know what? If we get a second overtime, 81's in reach,
He scored.
which is Kobe's number
he
2
scored-
all-time
Kobe did that in
scoring
regulation.
performance.
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I know.
By
he
the way,
did.
he's
Nice.
well.
As Wilt did 100.
Yeah.
Well, Wilt scored 100 with no threes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right? No threes.
Yeah.
But he had, I think in the entire overtime there was 19 points scored total by both teams, and he had 13 of the 19 points.
There was a point in the game I watched. It was in the overtime. Donovan had played 47 minutes. He played more than anybody else on the floor.
Yeah.
And he took the outlet pass and beat everybody
Blew
else
everybody,
down the floor.
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
saw-
this man has played more minutes than everybody on the court. And
Did
he
you
just
see the
beat everybody
Windhorst
down
article
the
this
floor.
morning?
No.
I was unaware of this. the great Brian Windhorst, a friend of mine,
Really
and I
good
think he's
friend
just
of
a
mine, yeah.
tremendous writer. These are the things that Windhorst turns because he talks to guys and he keeps notebooks on things. He's like, I may never need this, and he throws it away. But he came back to it overnight, and I thought it was brilliant. I'll read it to you. For 8 weeks this summer, there was Donovan Mitchell running endless sprints. And listen to this workout. I've never heard of this. Mitchell, his trainer David Alexander, and a jug of water. 6 sprints of 50 meters. Okay, you're gassed at 6. If you do 650s, you're gassed.
That's 60 yards in a football field.
Then 5 100 meters. 3 at 200 meters. And here's the kicker, and here's why he was able to do what he did last night. And then at the end, 2 lung-busting 400s. The most grueling of them all on a surface that was usually around 100 degrees in heat. My son is a coach, and he does sprint workouts and trainings, and he trains mostly for burst. But he also is familiar with distance workouts. This is unheard of. This is Walter Payton climbing the hill in off-season kind of stuff.
Like, he's been underestimated. Like I said, when he got here, I was like, bro, I didn't think he was that good. I knew he was good, but I didn't think he was that good. I'm telling you right now, man, for my bang for my buck, I ain't never seen nothing like that. I didn't see LeBron, I didn't see Kyrie, and I get it. I know Kyrie hit that shot, but the level that he plays at that won't let his team lose, I have not seen that in very.
He may not win the MVP, but he is damn well in the thick of that conversation.
He better be in it. I mean,
after this,
he's catching votes.
He's moving up from 6 to 3 in my mind.
Well, we're not even at the halfway point of the season, so there's a long
no,
way
we're
to
not.
go,
You know what though? That's a good thing. That means he's got more of this to come.
Exactly.
I mean, they could have very easily just got blown out and went home.
They were
and
down
just said,
23 early in the third quarter.
Without Darius Garland, without Evan Mobley, two of their key
It felt
pieces.
like an L from jump. It
yeah,
really did.
yeah.
That's why I wasn't that interested. But I was looking back every now and again. And I'm like, God, it's still big double digits. And then they got it to single digits. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But I did think that by himself, it was going to be too tall of a task. What I said was, because he's got the whole team on his back and no Garland, no Mobley, I immediately felt he's going to have a terrible fourth quarter because he's got to be gassed.
Yeah.
But when I read that paragraph from Wendy this morning, what I immediately thought of, and I want your takes on this, you said what I was thinking. He's doing that on his own. You did it because the coach ordered it. To me, that one paragraph told me all I needed to know, if I didn't already, about who this guy is.
Yeah, and unlike
he is
Kyrie,
driven to be not just great, but he's driven to be an MVP.
And unlike Kyrie, Jason, he's likable. He's a good teammate, right? The guys love him.
Yeah.
It seems,
He has
right?
fit
Like
seamlessly,
that's huge.
He's fit seamlessly into the lineup, into the locker room, into the city.
Did you go into the locker room post game or no?
I did briefly.
What was the
most of them
vibe?
were cleared out. The NBA changed its rules post COVID
Yeah.
on. So by the time we got in the locker room, almost everyone was gone. Kevin was standing there in a towel, and I said, "You better get dressed because you got to talk about 71. You've seen a lot of things in this building."
I don't know. I've ever seen Kevin that excited about anything, even winning the championship.
Kevin said it's the greatest thing I've seen in 15 years, and he played with LeBron. He played with Kyrie. He was on the floor.
Let's rate it. Is it?
Kevin Love tweeted this out this morning, by the way, which are his favorite moments as a Cav.
First thing he mentioned to me was the top one.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Brown in game one. And I said when JR forgot to score.
I mean, because I think he had a 50-point triple-double, didn't he?
I think he did.
In
game one.
Yeah.
In game one of the 18 series.
Man, I forgot he scored 34 in the first quarter against Portland.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh, I remember.
That was at home.
But what to you guys, and this, it's so easy to be prisoner of the moment.
Can't top a playoff game.
No,
It can't
of
top a
course.
championship.
No,
different
but
stages.
here's the way I'm going to ask the question. And I know that, it's like saying, well, you're throwing, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play?
Yeah.
But I'll preface it this way. Obviously, Rajai Davis hit a big home run. It was bigger because who it was against, the situation, and it was Game 7 of the World Series. But just for a second, if you can, and I know it's very difficult, wash Kyrie's 3 out of what it meant. Not what it meant, just your eyeballs watching it. Where does that rank for you guys in either Cavs all-time great performances or Cleveland sports all-time great performances?
You talking about Mitchell?
Mitchell last night.
Oh, that, to me, for me seeing it, probably, like, if you didn't even talk about Kyrie, it's like number one. You got to think about it. He only been here. Name me one player who got traded to a team, never played with him before. Remember, we always talk about the Heat being 19 and 18, right?
Right.
When LeBron and Chris Bosh. Name me one player that has ever been traded that comes to another team and gets 71. They don't even know how the offense. You got to figure it out for half the year. This dude came in and hit for 51. Not to mention, he's already gone for 50 this year.
Yeah.
This dude
it's
is
hard
crazy.
to compare.
I think you have to
a
separate
regular season
postseason.
game and a
Yeah,
think you have
that's
to
why I
separate
said, and I know it's really
postseason.
hard. Our minds don't work that way. Our minds know that Rajai's home run
Rajai
was
Davis
in the
is a
8th inning of
moment,
Game 7.
not a game.
No, that's why I say
Yeah.
take the moment and the magnitude of it out. Because when I did that this morning, and I did this exercise, and I tried to do it as fairly as I
Jason's
could.
getting everybody sick, by the way.
I'm not.
He's
I'm
getting
at-
everybody
No, he's
sick.
not.
We're all going to be sick because of him.
I'm at the end of
I
it.
didn't know he had 8 rebounds either. Oh, heck no.
Guys,
Listen,
he
heck
had,
no.
was it 99 points
99.
accounted for?
Yeah, 99.
It's
the
the
only
second
time
most
that's-
in NBA history.
Second only to
behind
Wilt's
Wilt
100.
Chamberlain.
And I heard you saying something. I'm going to challenge what
Yeah.
you said pre-show.
Number one.
You
Number
said
one.
anybody that compares this to Wilt Chamberlain's 100, that's idiotic.
It's
or whatever.
idiotic, yes.
I completely and could not disagree with you
Well,
anymore.
it's okay for you to be wrong.
I know it is.
Yeah.
But here's why, and I want you guys to weigh in. What Wilt did was a physical domination over everybody else that played the sport at that time.
He was a 9-footer playing with children.
That's exactly what it was. And they changed the rules for this man.
That's exaggerating a little bit.
No.
But listen,
That's unfair.
It's not unfair to say,
That's unfair.
It's not unfair to say he was a man amongst boys.
No, it's not.
And
It's unfair.
Nobody could stop him. It was so.
Wilt was the greatest physical specimen ever to
So-
live.
So he's penalized for that?
No, he's not
No.
penalized. However,
But
I
Donovan
don't
gets
want.
extra points for
That's
being 6'1".
exactly right.
He's
I don't want to
6'1".
penalize Donovan Mitchell.
He's not being penalized.
Right.
Wilt scored 100
So,
when there were no
Look,
three-pointers.
you're on one side.
Yeah.
I'm completely on the other. To me, I say Wilt's 100 is the most unbreakable record in sports. I don't think
Yeah.
it will ever be done again.
Unless there was a game that went till 5 or 6
Or
overtimes.
unless they went into the game saying, LeBron, you're getting it every time.
Jay, I got something very important. on
Okay,
this.
go ahead.
Bull, last week you were in Jay's chair and you said nothing before the mid-60s count.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Nothing.
before the 60s. I changed it to the 60s.
No, you can't do
And
that.
same
So
thing.
I'm going to ask you guys to be the
Nothing
the
before
judges
the
here,
60s.
okay? We're clearly on opposite ends of the spectrum. You've made your case. I think Wilt's was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. I don't think it will ever be topped.
You didn't see it.
However,
You've never
no.
seen it. That's
I
true.
mean, I've read about it. I've seen the picture. There's
Guys
no
play
video. By the way, there's no video of that game.
Bull,
Yes.
do you know, real quick, I didn't know this till right now.
Yeah.
Do you know what the final score of that 100-point game was?
Don't remember. Don't care.
Very high scoring.
169
Yeah.
to 147.
To me, it seemed like a freak show, like a carnival act. Like, hey, Wilt, you got 100 in you tonight?
Yeah.
It was also a traveling game. They played that in Hershey, PA. And at the time,
That's a fact.
remember, this was 20 years before the NBA was still playing their finals on tape delay on network TV.
They were all, all those things are irrelevant.
No,
I
the
don't know
reason
what they're doing.
it's not irrelevant because I had somebody who covered that game tell me this.
How many
That guy's senile at this
Atmosphere-
point. Let's be honest.
well, he told me this in
Yeah.
2003,
Yeah.
4.
To
Here's what he
historian-
said. He said those traveling games were so big to the league because they were trying to grow their fan bases outside of the urban areas. So there was and I'm not taking anything away from his 100. I'm trying to give it its proper context. There was an aura around all of those games. Guys, let's give them a show. We're here to win fans. That was it. Remember, 20 years later, this league was still playing their finals games on tape delay.
I mean, you got to think about it.
It's the highest scoring regular season game
them
in NBA
games-
Ever.
Hasn't the guy scored over 7? Didn't he score 5 times?
Here's
Didn't he score over 75
But you
times,
gotta-
Wilt? I
this
mean,
is
come
what-
on.
Did,
This
yeah.
is very
speaks to his
easy.
domination.
And there were
This
no
is-
threes.
This is
No.
very
He
easy.
didn't need
Donovan Mitchell did it with threes in overtime.
This-
Great, all-time great
This
performance,
is
but not Wilt
very.
Chamberlain.
This is very easy. Wilt Chamberlain played in a time when it was almost segregation. There's like 4 black people playing. Let's be clear. Now, guess what? The league is 75% black.
Yeah, the competition's a little better now,
Competition is
Bull.
crazy. You got Durant, you got LeBron, you got
You're Team J on this, aren't you?
Bro, this
So
is
you
not
think
even
it's more
close.
impressive than Wilt's 100?
Heck yeah.
Jason, you could
Heck yeah.
potentially
That's crazy.
end this debate.
Heck yeah,
So
it's more
there's no
impressive.
pressure on you here.
But here's the
6'1".
thing.
If
like,
Jason's team Bull, I will be the deciding factor.
Okay.
well,
All
you're
right.
gonna-
Very good.
I think I am Team Bull for this reason.
Okay.
Because he scored 71, not 100. He assisted on 28. So we're comparing 71 to 100.
Wilt didn't have an assist.
No, but I know, but we're counting Donovan's assists as points in this debate.
No, I'm not. No,
We're
I'm
saying
not. I'm
100
not.
to 99.
No. To me, I think it just throws more fuel on
Bro.
my fire for my argument. I thought that with those assists combined with his points, and also the bucket that he had with 3 seconds to go, that is pure effort, what he did.
I want to spend 30 seconds on that, and then I guess for this, I hate.
You're
these
gonna go to
debates.
Team Bull.
I'm going to say Team Bull.
Okay.
But that doesn't take away the fact I saw
Yeah,
things last
I think
night.
it's an amazing game.
I've never-
All-time
Unbelievable.
game.
Y'all both
I
crazy.
feel like
But
this
that's
is
what
I'm
we
not
do.
diminishing his
Right.
accomplishment.
That's what I don't want
know,
to do.
Y'all crazy.
I'm
I
not
think
asking
it's
you
the
to-
best. I think it's the best that I can remember since at least Jordan, if not more.
Right.
It's more impressive than what Kobe did. It's more impressive than Devin
We're a
Booker.
sports show. That's what we do.
Right.
We debate and
Yeah,
we
that-
like.
But it's also hard for me because I'll tell you a game that you probably don't even think about. Game 7 at Boston in 2018. I was talking to Draymond Green about this. LeBron controlled the entire game. He didn't have that stat line. And Draymond said he was telling people LeBron's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to control the other 9 guys for 48 minutes, and he did. He played every minute of the game.
Yeah.
He controlled the entire game. It's hard to compare an Eastern Conference Finals game like that when he
Sure.
didn't have the numbers
Right.
to what Donovan did last night. But regular season, I've never seen anyone do what Donovan did
you gonna
last
count
night.
But you're still Team Wilt.
I'm still Team Wilt.
Okay.
If you gonna
Can I
count,
be a tiebreaker?
if you
Yeah,
gonna,
hold on
no,
now.
hold on. If you gonna count the old dudes, count the old dudes. Because here's the thing: if you want to say people anoint Jordan and say all the Celtics rings don't count, they know him because it's more recent. They talk about Wilt Chamberlain all the time and say he got 100 here, he got 100 here. Let's be clear: Wilt Chamberlain was not playing against the top of the cream of the crop. You got to look at it. People go back and look at Babe Ruth and say Babe Ruth was cold, but there was a thing called segregation.
No, I don't count that. That's the
Babe
20s.
Ruth couldn't hit a
For me,
curveball to save his
it's not
life.
the 46.
Well, so
there were black players in the NBA in the 60s.
there
It wasn't 4 guys.
It was
It
6.
wasn't. It wasn't many.
Hey,
no,
here's
there was more than that,
two-
but it
two
wasn't.
points.
It wasn't the huge numbers.
No, it
Let
was
Mike
not.
make 2
The
points. and I'll-
league looked very, very,
Yes,
very
agreed.
Let
different.
Mike make
Agreed.
2 points, and I'm going to go back to that free throw.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in totality,
He's going to get this right, by the way.
in totality, Mitchell created 99 points last night.
Mm-hmm.
In the 100-point game, Chamberlain created 104. He had 2 assists that game.
Oh, I thought he had none. Okay, that's
No, he had
corrected.
2 assists. He had 25 rebounds. However, the reason I believe Mitchell.
By the way, that's a stupid stat to say he only created. His rebound might have led to points for other guys.
Well,
so that's stupid too.
I mean,
Well, no, but
Well,
it's direct creation. It's assist or
You got to
points.
draw a line.
the guy's got to
Yeah,
gotta
make
draw
the
a line
shot.
somewhere.
I mean,
Let
come
me
on, that's
My other
simple.
point, and this is why Jay and G are on the right side of this, is DeMar DeRozan would have
knew
been
you'd
an
get it
alien
right.
in 1962. DeMar DeRozan would have scored 182 points
Thank
every
you.
time he stepped
Oh,
on the
give me
field.
a break.
Oh, no, he
Alex
would've.
Caruso.
He would've.
Alex Caruso would have
Dominant.
averaged 53 points
Greatest
in
Havlicek
1962.
who?
That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Havlicek who if Caruso's
Havlicek
back
couldn't
there?
dribble with his left hand.
Come on, stop it.
Hey, we said we'd
Let's
live by
not
the
get
results
nuts.
of Mikey McNuggets.
Alex
and-
Caruso?
Hey, my God, we're living by the.
Hey, these dudes was running around here. Check this, chat. Who does this?
Wilt Chamberlain wasn't doing any of that stuff.
All the people
You're
he was
talking
playing
about
with
the-
was doing it.
Who cares about Wilt Chamberlain?
Gee, you're
Why are
talking
we
about the
talking
50s
about
and the
this?
40s.
I
Yeah.
can't dribble with
We're
this
talking
hand.
about this because it was. I saw a lot of debate on this last
Yeah.
night. I saw
Get
a couple
outta
people
here.
throw it out there, and I
DeRozan
wanted
would
to
have
save it for the
200.
show.
That's true.
Because I did hear Bull said before
Yeah,
the show
and
started.
Cat-
Some moron on Twitter said it's Will. No,
And Cavs fans are definitely not biased about this at all.
no. Listen, if I would bet, I had been asked before, was I more impressed with Kobe's 81? And my answer to that is yes, because of what we're talking about. Different game. I think it's funny that now
I
you're a
was
victim
more
of your
impressed with
own
Donovan
rule.
Mitchell than Kobe's 81. How about
I
that?
wasn't.
I was.
Kobe's 81
That was a
is
meaningless
still,
game.
It was still more impressive to me. Kobe's 81 to me
The fact
is still more impressive.
It's even more impressive the fact that it was a meaningless game. This dude is out there like I'm not. Look, we talk about,
about Donovan Mitchell?
We talk about the competition.
Kobe's.
We talk about the.
You're saying Kobe's is better than
No,
Donovan
I'm talking
Mitchell's?
about it in general. When we say, oh, it's a meaningless game, we got to count the playoffs. We talk about why players don't play, why they don't be competitive, why they always buddy-buddy, why in Tuesday in Milwaukee, you ain't going to show up or Indiana. This dude was down
Yeah.
20 points.
No, but gee, I'm saying this one is more impressive than Kobe.
I think both is impressive.
Well, of course they're both impressive. They're all
the fact that
impressive.
he needed overtime to get there, to me, does give me Kobe the edge,
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
in my mind.
that game was completely meaningless at the end of the year for Kobe.
Real
No,
quick.
it was, and Kobe was at the end of his
No,
year.
the 81 game was like in January. It was
No,
a January
I
game.
know, but it was his last season, wasn't it, or not?
No.
No,
it wasn't his last
season.
season.
No, you know what? What did he do in his last
I
game?
think I'm confusing it
60
with the
you are.
yeah,
60,
60 in his last game.
60.
80,
All right, it's a bad job
81 was
to me.
in like 2005,
Against the Raptors.
2006.
It was
Yes.
against Jalen Rose.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
offense, we love Jalen, but it was.
Why do we
Jalen's-
love Jalen?
Jalen's been torched for
Do
some
you
big
love
numbers
Jalen?
in the
You don't
past.
even know
Jalen
Jalen.
Rose.
How do you love him?
I'm a big. Jalen Rose was the first celebrity to ever tweet at me and had a debate with me. So Jalen Rose always has.
Jalen Rose is part of the Fab Five. What you talking
Jalen's
about?
Always love a soft
Jalen's a
spot in
great
my heart.
dude too. I can confirm.
Can we get Jalen on the show?
You know what? I bet he would do it. I'll reach out to him right now.
Well, while you're
let's-
doing
I
that,
would love to
let's
get
go
Jalen on the
memberships
show.
and then bring in
Memberships.
Aditi because Aditi may have a special guest with her today.
we
I'm
might
not
let
sure. She may
Jalen
pulling
be
a
the
tie
final
this.
vote on that.
We might.
Guys, we got to talk about memberships here for a minute. Become a starters tier, $1.99. You get the emojis and the badges, and then you get the coaches tier, $4.99 per month.
That's your favorite, isn't it?
Love the coaches tier. You get the bonus content, which we'll do today. Anthony and Mike had an embarrassingly bad topic. We're going to scrub and get.
Oh, what was it?
I thought it was awesome.
but they were basing it on a fake tweet.
Well,
I know,
the
but it
tweet
wa-
is irrelevant. It's more
the
the
tweet
topic
was
that came
irrelevant.
off
It was the jumping off point for the conspiracy, which I had
all
one
right.
ready to
Can
go.
we get that?
But you can't give this guy
know what
any
it is?
mention or any credit. It's fake, and it's embarrassing that
Wait.
you guys thought this guy was legit.
Oh, hold on.
It has been discredited.
Of course it's discredited. The guy's not a real guy. It's a made-up
Bull
thing.
discredited it.
Wait,
how you going to discredit something I don't know
no,
about?
listen, I reached out this morning to a Yankees writer and said, is this dude legit? And he said yes.
No.
So wait, we're saying we're saying no?
We have a source debate here.
I've spoken
Who's
to 3
let's
people
put
that
on
cover
YouTube-
the Mets.
Put
They're
on
like,
YouTube
I don't
chat.
know
Who
who
is
this guy
better
is.
sources?
Okay, well, that's
Bull or Jay right now?
By the way, this is the worst television ever. This is the
Yeah, it is
biggest
pretty bad.
inside joke.
Because we didn't even
We don't
explain
even say what it is.
But that's why they got to become a member.
Okay, that's the.
Because you know what? It's a fascinating topic.
It's a good jumping
Even
off
if it
point.
ends up being fake,
Yeah.
I have something that it reminded me of.
Subscribe
There
and
you
you
go.
can figure
By
out
the
if it's
way-
fake or real.
By the way, Jim Brown, he doesn't count then, right? If Will Chamberlain doesn't count, then Jim Brown doesn't count.
That's your rule. If it happened
But
before
G's saying it
1960.
too.
No, that's your rule, bro. I didn't
You're
co-sign that
discounting
rule.
Chamberlain.
I didn't co-sign that
Well,
rule.
I
I
think
didn't
the
create
NFL
that.
was more integrated in
Guys, we got-
1965.
You guys just said Alex Caruso would be the best player in the 60s.
I didn't
That's
say
the
that.
dumbest thing I've ever heard in my
He
life.
would get buckets.
I
For the
did,
record,
and you would.
I don't co-sign that, and I disagreed with it when I heard it.
Mikey probably thinks he could have played in the NBA in the 60s.
Alex
He does.
Caruso.
I would have been the best shooter ever in the 60s.
Oh, my
but I
God.
could've
You're
put
out of your
No,
mind.
Tyvus
Tyvus would have been the best shooter
Oh,
ever
my
in the 60s.
God, the delusion. Mikey McNuggets.
Wait, YouTube poll.
Yeah.
We do
What's
YouTube
more
poll. We also have
impressive?
Aditi.
Hey, put the poll
What's
up.
more impressive, Wilt's 100 or 71 from Mitchell last
We have a
night?
bias
We,
fan
we
base,
currently
of
have
course
we
they-
currently have a YouTube poll running. Who is better sources, Jay or Bull? So when that's done,
No, 5-minute YouTube poll.
Hey, you-
Mitchell 71.
And by the way,
104 for
if
Will.
you put Kobe's in there, I guarantee Chamberlain coming third.
put Kobe in.
Get him
Do
all
all
the way
three.
up out of
Do all
here.
three.
Yep, let's see.
We're going to get Chamberlain off the sticks, period.
And Jason right now looks like the Grim
Undertaker.
Reaper. Does he not look like the Grim Reaper right now?
Is it
Aditi,
Didi ready?
please save us. Aditi, how are you today?
And what you,
Why is Mikey awkwardly saying, how you doing today?
Was that awkward?
Well,
My
I
bad.
think he was just trying to cut you all off.
Yeah, he was trying
Why?
to transition.
Why? Why?
Because we needed to be cut off.
I don't think
quite
so.
frankly.
Well, I mean, G is the one who just said this is terrible television, right? So,
He's
like,
wrong. He don't know what the hell he's talking about. Don't listen
Yeah.
to him.
I told you. I said it.
And G speaks the truth. He doesn't sugarcoat
he's just
anything.
trying to help him.
Aditi, on a much more serious note, we
Yes,
started
Jason
the
with his
show.
hood on his head.
Well,
Let's
I
start
just want
with
to.
that.
I just want to move the train down the
Yeah,
tracks.
move it.
On a much more serious note, we began the show, obviously talking about the Damar Hamlin injury. We had Dr. Richard Figler on, who's the director of concussion, the Cleveland Clinic Concussion Center. What do you know? How do you know Damar? What can you tell us about the kind of person he is, and what you might be hearing from sources that we haven't heard anything about yet nationally?
Well, let's start with the second part of that. So I think it's very, very dangerous to speculate in any way at all. And I actually lived this myself a few years ago when I was in that same exact stadium in Cincinnati, and Ryan Shazier was hurt in the most frightening of manners. And I mean, last night, the first thing I went to was standing in the bowels of that stadium outside of that locker room as Kevin Colbert paced, just waiting for some sort of word. And Ryan had been taken away via ambulance. And, you know, Ryan and I, in fact, texted last night as we're both sort of jarred by this. So I think that the most important thing I remember from that time is that week as I was on air nonstop was don't speculate, don't guess, don't be an expert where you're not an expert, and as much as we can, let's humanize who this person is. Let's show a little window into the personality of who this young man is. He's not just somebody under a face mask, some dude in a uniform who fell on a football field. So if it's okay, I feel more comfortable going in that direction.
Absolutely.
Damar Hamlin is a Pittsburgh native, Jay, who, you know, in situations like this, we love to say, you know, this is a great young man who had everything in front of him. Guys, this really and truly is a great young man who has lived his life, who continues to live his life, who has been what any mother would want someone to be. He grew up in not the sweetest, ritziest parts of Pittsburgh, a suburb called McKees Rocks. He was very open in talking about how maybe half of his friends lost their lives before he was out of high school. His own father was in prison for 3.5 years when he was in high school, and his mother was desperate for him to go to private school. And so she ran a daycare center and she cleaned. And from the time that Damar was 12 years old, he was cleaning alongside his mom, helping her to earn money so that he could go to private school. He was the #1 defensive prospect in the entire state of Pennsylvania coming out of high school. He had almost 50 scholarship offers to every big name program that you could possibly think of. But his father had come home from prison, and he and his father and his mother had another son. And I think when Damar was going on his recruiting visits, his little brother was maybe a year old, 2 years old, a toddler. And so Ohio State, Clemson, all of these schools wanted Damar. And he chose Pitt football because he said it was that important that he be present for his little brother.
Wow.
And that his little brother see on a daily basis what his big brother is doing. And for Damar, he had talked about, even though while his father was in prison, he still had a relationship with him, it was different than his father actually being present. And so Damar wanted to be present for his little brother. So he goes to Pitt. He played 5 years at Pitt. He was a captain his final year at Pitt. I shared a story this morning that was written in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, one of the local papers here, that when the Pitt Panthers defensive coordinator had tonsil cancer, Damar was one of the players that he counted on to be his voice on the field. Damar and Miles Sanders and 2 other local Pittsburgh high schoolers who have gone on to play in the NFL for the last 2 years have run a football camp, a free football camp for 300 kids on the south side of Pittsburgh. No admission, no price. 300 kids go to this camp for free. I'm telling you all of this because Damar is not just a football player. He is not just a member of the Buffalo Bills who had something unbelievably frightening happen. This is a young man who you should be rooting for regardless. And I'm getting a little emotional, and I hate to be emotional, but I think you all know that my son is a massive Bills fan. And, you know, this is one of those players that he actively roots for because my son also loves the Pitt Panthers, and this guy's a Pitt Panther. And so go away from me for a minute so I can just wipe underneath my eyes.
Here's an update. I know people have been following this. Hamlin was doing charity work, a toy drive.
Right.
And the goal was to raise $2,500. You see this? I actually saw another update just now. Apparently, Steve Becker says they've now raised almost $4 million for a toy drive where the goal was $2,500. And almost all of it has been done in the 15 hours or whatever it is.
I think it was around 100,000 before the game, someone told me.
Guys, last night, I'm not trying to take credit for this. I don't know who was first. It doesn't matter who was first. Yeah. But I know that last night I shared this. I hadn't seen it anywhere, so I shared it. And when I shared it, the total donations were not even $5,000.
Oh my goodness.
I can't remember when exactly I put it. I mean, I could find the exact time that I put it out. I think I was one of the first people that shared it. And when I did share it, it was less than $5,000. And within an hour, it was in 6 figures. And we just kept seeing those numbers go. And again, 2 parts to that story. One, the minute that he was allowed to do this, because remember, this is pre-NIL. He had to wait for his eligibility to end. The second that his eligibility at Pitt ended and he was legally allowed to create this GoFundMe, he did. He did do it 2 years ago. It was obviously like, okay, yay, I can raise money. And he's not looking to line his own pockets. He's looking to get toys for kids at this daycare center that his parents run. So it's that piece, that's who he is. And then it's the other piece that how great are people, right?
No
like
kidding.
As much as we sit here and we love to say, oh gosh, what is the world coming to? And can we be civil to each other and this, that, and the other, that people can unite in that way so quickly and in feeling helpless want to do something so much.
Didn't
and
something
we
similar
see
happen
the
with Josh Allen?
result of that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Didn't something, Aditi, similar happen with Josh Allen and his mother? And the Bills fans were donating 17.
Andy Dalton had
Andy Dalton
a few years ago, and Andy Dalton actually just donated $5,000 to the toy drive.
Over 151,000 different people have donated. is now topped $4 million. Now gone over $4 million.
And I imagine that number will continue to climb. Aditi, you tweeted that out 45 minutes after he had fallen on the field. So in all likelihood, and I don't know who did it first, but obviously with your reach, your tweet, I'm sure has been retweeted thousands of times. And it's amazing how, we spend a lot of time, to your point, about social media can be such an ugly, toxic place.
Yeah.
But when you see something like what we witnessed in real time last night, first of all, the number of athletes, organizations, former players, teammates, people that didn't even know him that were tweeting prayers for Demar and his family. It was really moving. And then to see people reach for their wallets and their checkbooks as they did last night, it is really a testament to your point. People are great.
Because I think in this moment we all feel helpless, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what can we do? These men, these gladiators who go out there and entertain us every Sunday and Monday and Thursday and sometimes Saturday, who in the pursuit of doing a job in a profession also have all these ripples of dealing with are mocking the way that they play or extolling them or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And this boils it all down. These are all human beings. I mean, that ambulance didn't leave because they were waiting for Damar's mother to get in the ambulance. Yeah. They had to get Damar's mother down from the stadium into that ambulance. It's just, it makes me feel really good that in the absence of not being able to do something, so many people wanted to do something. And we're seeing it in these donations.
Aditi, you said you spoke to Ryan Shazier. You speak to a lot of players. You know a lot of players. I wonder, eventually the players are going to get back on the field. I wonder for the players for all players, it's going to be jarring, I think, the first time they go back on the field after this. But specifically to the players that played in this game, the Bills players who it's a teammate, Tee Higgins who hit him, or had the collision with him that led to this. I just wonder from a mental standpoint and from you talking to guys, like, do you think it's going to be hard for all these guys to get back on the field? Because we see injuries and we see guys get knocked out, but they always give the thumbs up, right? But like to have him, as Jay said before, look lifeless apparently, and you don't even know, like this guy might die.
Adam, he needed CPR. He needed CPR.
This is unlike any other situation. Right.
CPR. I mean, do I think it's hard? Yes. Nigh on impossible. I hope that every single team has adequate mental health professionals in their buildings today to talk to everybody.
Good point.
I mean, that's it. Point. Like, I don't know how else to address that.
Especially those that watched it.
Again, when I sit here, I'm not trying at all. I hate this idea of, oh gosh, okay, Aditi's texting this person and that person and talking to this coach and that. Like, I'm just saying, are you okay? It's all like, let's all check in with each other. Like, are you holding up okay? Hey, I'm thinking of you. I'm not trying to get one of Damar's former Pitt teammates who now plays with the Steelers to give me a quote to share on social media.
Sure.
I'm just thinking that you are personally affected by this, whether you were standing on that field or you were watching on TV or you know him or you don't, or you play this game or you have any interaction with this game or any of it. And yes, it is going to be impossibly hard. I think that the level of compartmentalization, all of those things, I can't speak to that because I'm not a mental health professional. So all I can speak to is, gosh, I hope there are mental health professionals in every single building and available to every person who needs to and wants to talk about this, whether you were a fan in the stands or you were on that field in a uniform.
Aditi, right along those lines, I'm concerned about Tee Higgins, and we haven't really talked about that. But like, I covered Ohio State football when Jerry Westbrooks hit Adam Talafaro and paralyzed him, and the range of emotions that Jerry went through with that. I spent 45 minutes with him. Jerry was angry because Adam ducked his head and said, "You did that wrong. I can't believe you did that." And I'm not saying anyone did anything wrong last night. And obviously, this is even more tragic. Kurt Coleman paralyzed Tyson Gentry at Ohio State practice, and the weight that Kurt carried with that for years. Now T is in that situation. You know him. I don't know him at all. I just can't imagine what he's going through today. And you talk about mental health help. He's going to need it more than anyone, I think, is just you're going to feel responsible.
I mean,
regardless.
all I can, and T did not do anything wrong, and T is not culpable, and anybody who is saying his name he's another wonderful, wonderful, wonderful young man. All I can think about is that image. Someone posted a photo going back to the whole, social media, yes, can be bad, but yes, can also be great. Posted a photo of T walking out with his mother, and they had their arms around each other, and thank goodness there is that support there.
Yeah. Aditi, I know you know Ryan Clark from your days of covering the Steelers. He was really one of the main voices that we were getting our information from last night as he joined Scott Van Pelt after the broadcast had thrown it back to the studio. I thought Ryan did a marvelous job, but he said one thing that really moved me, and I reached out to Ryan, and we had a brief conversation about his comment, and I want to get your reaction to it because you've covered these men, you know these people, in some cases almost boys, 24 years old. Well, I think back to when I was 24. Ryan Clark made a comment that said, and it was just one line, and it was so prophetic and moving to me. He said, at 24 years old, I didn't even know I could die. These guys, when they put on that uniform, they know there's inherent risk. But most of the risk that they think about is the risk of being paralyzed and changing their lives forever. I don't know that prior to what we saw last night, any of these guys, like race car drivers know when they strap in, this could be it. I may never touch the ground again, but that's never really been the feeling for football players because we had never seen it. Talk about the mentality, the almost gladiator mentality of these guys, and Ryan's situation of knowing that his sickle cell diagnosis and an earlier situation he had playing in Denver could cost him his life, yet he stood in Mike Tomlin's office and tried to tell Mike Tomlin through other doctors, I'm going to be okay, before Tomlin shut down the whole conversation. What are your memories of that and this mentality that I speak of?
Well, Jay, it's interesting you say that because I was getting ready to say I would urge everybody to go find the Pivot podcast, which Ryan does so tremendously. Awesome. I believe it was this past summer, had Mike Tomlin on, and they talked about that very episode where Ryan Clark had his family, had his doctors, had prepared a 30-minute conversation or persuasion to allow Mike Tomlin to let him play in Denver. And 5 minutes in, Mike Tomlin told him to stop talking and said, if you were my kid, there is no way I would let you play. And Mike Tomlin speaks very, very eloquently his responsibility to lead, to look out for these young men, to that, he had this line, I may butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, you cannot expect unique results without unique relationships. And so Ryan Clark, besides being one of my all-time favorites and tremendous at what he does, is uniquely positioned to speak about this very specifically. But it also, that conversation that he had with Mike Tomlin, I hope he gives you insight into where Zach Taylor and Sean McDermott were last night as well. Right. Because I will tell you this, they also, two coaches that I've spent a very good amount of time with, men first, coaches second, fathers first, coaches second, right. People who care about their players first, coaches second, all of those things. And the way that they together discussed this, and there was no conversation about we need this game for seeding, but this is an important game, or this is the biggest Monday Night Football matchup ever, that it was all about the men that they are charged with guiding and leading and protecting and looking out for. There's so much more to this than a game.
I think Troy Vincent
showed great leadership.
I think it was Troy Vincent that said this morning, what these two coaches did last night was lead. Mm-hmm. And Aditi, it's my hope that and there'll be plenty of time to dissect the minutia of the timeline of what was going on. We know about the Joe Buck comment that the players have been told, take 5 minutes and gather your thoughts, and then we're going to play football. And that just seems patently absurd. It seemed absurd at the time. To me, on the outside looking in, and there may be a lot of stuff that I'm sure there is a lot of stuff I don't know, but to me it felt like those that were leading last night were Taylor and McDermott, because I believe that they were I think Bull, you pointed out that Taylor came across the field, had a conversation with McDermott, and it looked like through the prism that we had that these were the two men saying, no, we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
We're not going to do this. And I hope we don't find out that the league was pushing the product, let's get this thing on the road, the show must go on, because this was unprecedented. This wasn't a player that was carted off with a thumbs up. This was a player laying motionless and lifeless without a heartbeat on the field. And when I saw the cutaway of Josh Allen, I immediately said, I think this young man's in a fight for his life, and there is no way you can ask these other 100 men to go back out there and play this game. And I think the right call eventually was made.
When Stephon Diggs started crying, they showed Stephon Diggs with tears in his eyes. And I lost it. I said, okay, this is not right. This is not what we have ever seen before. That alone. When have you – I mean, we've seen players kneel. We've seen players have nervous expressions on their faces. But like that, nothing like that. And –
yeah, that image right there of
Josh
Allen.
This all says everything that you are saying about Zach Taylor speaks to who he is and who that Bengals organization is as well. And who largely the National Football League is. Let's be honest, okay? Like there are a lot of really, really, really good people in the National Football League. And you know, if this is Steelers-Ravens, I can see John Harbaugh doing the same thing. I can see
absolutely.
Mike Tomlin doing the same thing. If this is Browns, Falcons, I can see, you know, so they did. Yes, they deserve kudos, but they also did what is expected in that they were humans, and we know that they are humans.
Aditi, apparently Mike Tomlin just spoke and would only answer 2 questions because he was starting to get emotional about it, because he was talking about how he knows this kid since he's 12 years old, and apparently his family put out a statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It just talks about how they are so thankful for all the medical people, for the Bills, for the Bengals, and how everybody treated it. They said there's apparently going to be a medical update at some point today. So,
Jordan Rooney is the guy who tweeted out last night.
Yeah, he's his agent.
He is his marketing.
No, he's not his agent. He's not his agent.
No, he's not. I think he handles his marketing. And he put out a statement last night that said his vitals had returned to normal and that he was essentially had been intubated so that they could, control. He didn't really go into the detail, but did say that his vitals had come back to normal. And there was a lot. And I was, as I'm watching this in real time, and I know so many of the players at ESPN, and particularly some of the behind-the-scenes folks, I was really surprised that there wasn't an attempt to talk about Jordan's tweet or to get him on the air, because while Twitter and the Twitter sphere was trying to verify who this guy is, they were trying to parse whether or not this was reliable information. I thought this was the most important information in the moment last night, and ESPN never even made reference to it. I was really surprised by that.
But Jay, to be fair, we at CBS were told. Yeah,
no, I know you got to be careful. You've got to vet it. But what I was surprised at was, and this may have been going on behind the scenes, and maybe they couldn't get a hold of Jordan. But what, as a viewer, in real time, I wanted Jordan to be interviewed by Scott Van Pelt. Tell us what you apparently know, because it was so dire that Stephon Diggs reportedly took an Uber from the stadium to the hospital and essentially had to, I don't want to say muscle his way in, but he had to talk his way into the hospital.
Ben Baby had to vouch for him.
Yeah. Right, had to say, no, this is like one of the best receivers in the NFL, and it's his teammate. He needs to go inside. Everybody was dying for, wrong term, everybody was trying to get any information that they possibly could. And to me, I looked at this guy, I looked into his credentials, and I said, oh, this guy's legit. I mean, he's not some Yahoo who's tweeting out. Because he didn't have the blue check mark, people wanted to dismiss his information. I thought in the moment he had
but you know what,
information.
again, this is what I'll say again. I think that in a situation like this, you have to be very, very careful that there is not undue speculation, that we're not playing like the, tabloid doctor. This person doesn't treat someone, but they're going to guess what 9 minutes of CPR means. So, let's not do that.
Right.
And I think it's also one of those things that you want to have respect for the family when it comes to the dissemination of any information.
Absolutely.
And Damar's agent yesterday eventually put out a statement that was different than what this young man, Jordan Rooney, shared. And I think that you have to be careful. It's not necessarily about the blue check mark, but is this person authorized to share this information about Damar's medical status? And being that it was someone that, did not necessarily have relationships that were in the media that were easily verifiable or substantiated, I think having a little caution is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I'd like to know
the Bills to release something.
What was going on behind the scenes. I would imagine that ESPN was trying to get a hold of Jordan to see if he would come on and share what he knew with them and their audience, where he got that information. It was really the only piece of medical information that we got from anyone last night. Nobody else had anything.
So I worked with medical and PHI for 8 years. So technically, even if they did have something,
the HIPAA.
Yeah, he can't. Even if it was, they would have to verify his wife. And even if so, you would have to have a power attorney as the only person that could really speak on your behalf, unless he gives you permission to do so. But obviously he's not conscious enough to do it. So I can see why they kind of said, no, I don't know who you are. We can't let you in.
Aditi, I know this is a terribly speculative question. We chewed on this a little while earlier. The last thing anybody was thinking about last night, and really even today, is playing a football game. But ultimately, the NFL has on its plate right now a very weighty decision that is going to have implications, really perhaps going all the way to the Super Bowl, as home field advantage is at stake. It's impossible to guess what the NFL is going to do here, but what do you see happening and how this decision is made, what the timeline has to be? It's incredibly time sensitive going into the final week of the season. How do they navigate this really uncharted territory?
I don't work for them anymore. So,
how they operate, though.
Yes, I think that these are all conversations that are being had. I hope that part of how, whether it was true or false, this 5-minute thing, which we heard Troy Vincent say that it was false and wasn't actually anything that the league had suggested, that there would be a 5-minute break and then, a 5-minute warm up and a return to the field, whatever. But sometimes the outcry in response to that, even if it was false, was such that I think there's a strong awareness that you need to do the right thing. And we may not know what that right thing is right now, but this isn't just about optics. This isn't just about money and TV contracts and orderly scheduling. You need to, as you talked about earlier, all of these ripple effects, you need to consider every single one of them. I don't know. I can't speculate. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if you just,
it's hard. There's
these
no
two
easy
teams
answer.
play 16 games and that's it. And you just cancel that game and you move forward and the standings are what the standards are, where they are today, and they play a week 18 next week. I don't know that you can, at this point, play that game, repeat that game. The Bills got on their plane and they went home because they were in no position to stay in Cincinnati and potentially lace up and play today. So you just cancel the game, and there's no forfeit. There's nothing. It's just two teams play.
And you go
one less
winning
game
percentage. Yeah, you
I
could
think,
do it that way.
Aditi, I think I said before that if they're gonna replay it, they move the whole season back a week. Next weekend they just play Bills Bengals, assuming he's okay by then. I think if he's not, then I don't know. But if he's recovering, I think you push the whole season back a week, except for the Super Bowl, because you have 1 week instead of 2, and you play just Bengals Bills next weekend, and then play the final week the week after and push everything back. You think there's any chance they would do that? I think that's the only thing that makes sense if you're going to play the game.
Adam, I don't know. I will say
Yeah.
this, after covering this league for 15 years and not having ever witnessed anything even remotely close to this,
Yeah, it's impossible.
Is it smart to put these young men back on a football field in 4 days, in 5 days? I just don't, I don't think it's like the University of Virginia. I don't think they just end the season, or don't play. But I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I have no idea.
It's a tough one. And I don't envy them because it's
going back there, and again, I'll use this again, and only because it's a personal experience. I remember when Ryan Shazier went back to Cincinnati for the first time after he was hurt and walked on that field. I just, I don't know if the Bills can be psychologically ready to go back to Cincinnati right now in, again, 4 days. I don't want to speculate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wish that I had some good answers for you. I wish I had something concrete. Yes. But again, this is why they make those decisions. And you know what? There are a lot of smart people there at the National Football League, smart people within these organizations. And I am having faith that they are considering any and all angles, that this is not just about money and cleanliness and a schedule and fairness. And I'll tell you this, I'll give you one piece of speculation. If they don't play, and if there are 2 teams that play 1 fewer game, there's not going to be one coach out there that complains that that's a competitive disadvantage or advantage or unfair ground.
Right.
No,
I mean, not even the Chiefs, who are in a situation, obviously, where it could cost them home field advantage. We don't know Cincinnati, Buffalo. All these teams are in the mix. Yeah. I think no matter what the league does, there's going to be criticism because that's just the way it is. It's almost like,
right.
not in scope, but when they were making the Deshaun Watson decision and all of that was going on, everybody knew that it doesn't matter. You're not going to win. That you can't win this PR battle.
Right.
Yeah. I know the league, and you know this, Aditi, oftentimes they put their finger in the air and they sort of test which way the wind is blowing.
Which way is the wind blowing?
Before they make these decisions, and that's always been one of my criticism of the league. I hate the notion that you make decisions based off polls, based off public opinion. Do the right thing, and you know what that is.
Jay, that's what I was saying to you earlier, that if we are thinking about the way the wind was blowing, it's pretty darn uniform.
Yeah, they can't miss this one.
I mean, what happened to, who was it? It was Skip Bayless, right?
Yeah.
Right, yesterday? Skip Bayless, who got completely, not that I want to give any extra attention to any of this, but ripped in every which way for his take on continuing to play the game. So, if it is something where is public opinion right now, public opinion is that the single most important thing right now is the mental health of these men.
Well said.
Thanks, Aditi.
Aditi, I know this was tough for you. We adore you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts on what I know is a very, very difficult afternoon for you. Thank you, Aditi.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a bit about Damar with everyone. And we can talk about the Browns Steelers Thursday.
Yeah. Plenty of time for that. Yep. Aditi, thanks.
Appreciate
it's hard.
it.
The only thing I would say before is that you say we should do the right thing. I don't know what the right thing is. Obviously, the right thing last night was to not play.
You know what I think
But
happens?
going forward, I'm not sure what the right thing is.
It's just a guess. They're not going to finish the game.
I don't think they will.
They're just going to
Because I think that's the right thing. Because Aditi made a point.
Yes.
Those men are going to be better equipped in 5 days to put their cleats on that turf again.
I guess not.
They're not. I mean, you just can't ask them to do that. You saw the looks on their faces. I think the right thing in this instance is very simple. The right thing is, to what she said, you use winning percentages instead of, because let's face it, a 17-game sample and a 16-game sample, is there that much difference? And even if the Chiefs end up being on the short end of this stick and fall to the 3 and have to play a first-round playoff
This will
game,
benefit them.
well, it will if they go by off winning percentages.
Yeah, well, what else would they do?
I don't know what else they would do. I hope that's what
Bills
they
have
do.
the head-to-head.
Bills
over
beat the
Chiefs this year.
Chiefs, and I don't know. So that has to be factored in. You can't ask the Bills to go to the Chiefs and play a playoff game when they beat them head-to-head this year.
But
And the Bengals beat the Chiefs.
There's no great answer.
No matter what scenario you pick,
There's going to be there's going to be punch holes in this argument.
Are the Bills going to be, if the Bills, is it just that they can't play in Cincinnati from a mental standpoint, or they can't play, period?
I just don't think there's enough time for them to play.
I don't either. I think this is so time sensitive. Asking the other 30 teams to take that 18th week and just sit it out, I think that's.
I think.
What about the teams that were planning on resting their players and had a first-round bye? You're talking about a months of inactivity.
Yeah, and something, there's a lot of logistics involved with NFL teams and the amount of hotels that you need. And Buffalo is probably already planning on going back after the game anyway. That's standard procedure.
Yeah.
After the game, you fly home. But the fact that they left and went
took it out of the NFL's hands.
Tells me they are not playing a game anytime soon.
I agree with you. I think that I don't know if there was discussion between the league and the Bills, but I'm sure they had a flight that was chartered. They left shortly. They stayed at the stadium until just shortly after midnight, and then, as planned, took their chartered flight back to Buffalo. Yeah. I think when I read that early this morning, I said, "Oh, that takes the decision out of the league's hands."
The players should decide what happens.
I agree with you. I one of the things I thought of last night when they were discussing what happens, and they made that what seems a patently absurd comment now, they're going to go regroup for 5 minutes and stretch, and then they're going to play. I immediately thought, you go into both locker rooms, and on a show of hands, how many guys, and I can assure you that it would have been overwhelming on both sides. We're not playing this football game. And that's why I was glad that ultimately, however they got there, whether it was Taylor who initiated this whole thing, however they got there, they got to the right decision to not play a football game last night.
And Roger Goodell's received a lot of criticism, and rightfully so, for a lot of the show must go on. But it's not like Roger was on the phone with somebody in the stadium going, get him ready, get him ready, get him suited up.
We don't know that. We don't know that it happened, and we don't know that it didn't.
Oh, I think it did, but
no, I don't.
Maybe not him personally.
I mean, who knows how Joe Buck said that? It's standard procedure. He could have said
the players were warming up.
I know, but that's what I want to know. I want to know where did Joe Buck get that comment? Was it a producer that heard from the league office?
It could be one guy on the field going, okay, well now. Well,
let's be clear.
I will say this before you start, G. Bush, quickly. There is constant communication between the league office and the broadcast partner. And I would not be surprised at all if there wasn't immediately an open line of communication between someone in Bristol and someone in Park Avenue offices and I'm not saying it was the commissioner, but I think early on when they kept taking one commercial break after another, it was apparent that a broadcast decision had to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do believe, from working inside that bubble and seeing how that goes, there was absolutely an open line of communication between the league and the network as to what we're going to do here.
I just don't believe that the league was never considering continuing the game.
I'm going to keep it real. We in left field. I'm kind of hot right now, too. I'm kind of hot because we do this every freaking time something happened on this field. Everybody want to pivot and act like I done heard people talking about, just the mental health of the players. And, you could die. They don't even know they could die out here. We sit here and talk about this stuff every single time. Schedule remakes, how we going to make it up, what the league feels about it. I don't give a damn what the league feels about it. Let's keep it real. Why we don't talk about the stuff that matter? This young man, you want to know how what this you need to know about him? He's 24 years old, right? He got a contract for $160,000. That's his bonus. And he earns $825,000 this year. You say, G. Bush, why are you talking about this man's money? Because guess what? He's been in the league 2 years. That means he's not vested. That means if he never plays another down in his life, he don't get another check for the NFL. Let's be clear about this. You got to play 3 to 4 years before you even sniff a pension. So all this heartwarming and prayers and condolences don't do nothing for that boy's mom that got to go home, look at her son, and he might need extensive care for the rest of his life. And you know what the NFL will tell you? Well, we'll look out for the people like him. No, you won't. No, you won't. Let's talk about the disability policy for the NFL, right? They moved it from $22,000 a month to $4,000 in the last collective bargaining agreement. Did you know that the NFL has a private board that reviews all aspects with their doctors and with their neurologists and their specialists? They can deny benefits even if Social Security deems you to be permanently disabled. The league can come back and then say, the government is they're experts, but let's take it over so we don't pay anything out. only 15% get approved by Social Security. The league says that number should be lower. Get that. 15% of the people who apply for disability in this country, I know, I was a disability expert. It's very low. I submitted over almost 250,000 applications in 1 year one time. I know. Since the CTE settlement, only 6.5% of the settlement has been paid, according to the admin's website. I looked it up yesterday. And 60% of the claims have a qualifying diagnosis but have not been paid. Let's talk about this. They're also moving the pension. And that pension, he got to make it to 55. He's 24. And they've moved that between $3,000. They moved it down to $3,000 when it was $5,600 a month. And the last stat that you should know about is the Bills owner Terry Pegula owns the Sabres as well as the Buffalo Bills, and his net worth is $6.7 billion. My question to you is, NFL, when do salaries become guaranteed? If you know these young men are going out there and they could die on that football field, I don't give a damn what your thoughts and prayers are. Do the right thing. I just heard Aditi say it 7 times. This is a savage sport. Men are dying every week. And you covered that up during CTE, and now you want to act like you the top of the food chain because you got the CPR people on the field on time? That's the least you should do. You're not gonna pay that man's you're not gonna pay that man's tuition for his kids. You're not gonna give him no disability money. You don't do nothing. All you do is collect them big checks, and we go play fantasy footballs, and I hear these dudes' thoughts and prayers for a whole damn 2 hours. Y'all don't care about them kids. These young black kids is putting on the line. And you telling them what they put on the line ain't worth it because you know why? Because you don't want to pay for somebody that's broken and battered and can't take care of themselves because it costs you money. So it is all about money. And I ain't heard nobody talking about no contracts. And he's sitting up here cashing these checks. We worship these owners. They do anything they want to. Anything. And as long as the product is good, we salute it. I'm pissed off today because ain't nobody talking about the real stuff. There's people out there, players are saying they just want to wait for us to die. I like the NFL just like the rest of y'all, but I'll be damned if I'm going to sit up there and pat Roger Goodell on the back for running this organization the way he does. They run it like a criminal organization. Sick of it. I'm tired of that, man. I just had to get that off my chest because all this stuff, you ain't talked about what this boy gonna go through. This kid could be damaged the rest of his life. And we talk about making up games. I don't care about making up no damn football games.
Bernie Kosar is the one that said that. You mentioned the player that said they're waiting for us to die. I thought about that conversation we had with Bernie on this very set about the league not properly taking care of these gladiators that have churned out billions of dollars for these owners. Yeah. And
part of that
Bernie
is honestly, part of it is a failure of the leadership of the players' union.
That historically has been a problem.
Do the right thing. It don't take you or you to twist my arm to do something I should be doing for my players regardless. Everything ain't a negotiation. You getting billions. You can die today. That's a sliver of these people just want basic health care. We talk about $4,000 a month, boo. They don't need no players association to do the right thing by their players. It's called do the right thing, period. You got it.
You're right. The league the league is never going to voluntarily come out and say
they're bad guys.
We need to do because they're a business. And someone once told me over a dispute that they were having, a media member, a dispute they were having with the NFL, which became public and it actually involved Roger Goodell. And this person told me what they learned about the process was this man is ruthless and he runs the organization in a ruthless manner. Now, care. Unfortunately, that is not to benefit of the players. It's to benefit of his bosses, who are the 32 owners.
Yeah, you're right, G.
This man it's his job to make as much money as he can for the owners. However, I will say this, and this is something that has bothered me for a long time. When it became public, the dollar amount of the CTE settlement, I had a player who told me that is laughable. And this is what the player said. 10 years from now, get back to me on how much of that money they've paid out. Chidi Ahanatu played for the Bucks for a long time. Very good friend of mine. He's been involved in trying to get some of this settlement money. I know other players that were named on the complaint against the league. I know other players that believe they deserved it but didn't put their name on it, which was I found fascinating, and they all had different reasons why they didn't enter as a party to the lawsuit. But it is befuddling to me how, Jason, and maybe you have answers to this, how what looked like a win for the players at the time and an advancement of this sport that, quite frankly, is still taking advantage of its members. We look at these players, the mistake we make is we look at these players and think they're millionaires for life. The vast majority of these players,
lose all their money.
There was a stat a number of years ago, Jason, I'm sure you're familiar with this. 75% of the players within 5 years of leaving the field are one of the following: either broke, incarcerated, divorced, or addicted. So I think we as fans, to your point, need to do a better job of holding the league accountable.
Billionaires
for doing
are never
what
held
they,
accountable.
But I know that, and that's what I hate.
G's
that
right,
because
they do
you're
whatever
right.
they want.
But it is beyond my recollection, or I can't get my arms around the notion that there was this blasted headline everywhere about this negotiated settlement between the league and the players, yet they're still sitting on the vast majority of that money, and the interest on the money they're sitting on has exceeded the amount that they've paid out.
What did you say?
They're actually using this as a slush fund.
What did you say was the percentage that got
6.5% is paid out.
6.5%?
Over 60% of the applications placed in have a diagnosis that says they should be getting paid, and they've already.
Well, the point that you made that I want to come back to is, it's all in the fine print. The devil is in the detail. One of the things that the league wanted to take better control of was how we get to this diagnosis. And
the league shouldn't.
The league is using its own doctors.
Yeah,
Bernie
it's
Kosar
ridiculous.
has told me on a number of occasions.
Why are the courts not stepping in?
I don't know.
Ask Tyvus. Tyvus just did this recently.
Yeah.
Tyvus literally went through this exact process recently. Tyvus
It's
and tomorrow.
crazy. It's
Before
a
we move on,
disgrace.
though,
The
this is
owners
the
are
first show.
freaking
Boy, I got to get this in
All
real
right,
quick.
go ahead.
This is the first show since we launched on May 9th. We have not talked about the Cleveland Browns. The first show. But that doesn't mean we're not going to tell you about Tri-C, because today they are sponsoring the last 10 minutes of the show. As always, the last 10 minutes of the show, a.k.a. today, is sponsored by Cuyahoga Community College. Tri-C supports their students financially, professionally, and personally, opening up the doors of endless possibilities. Tri-C is where the future starts, and it starts right now. Classes begin January 17th. That's coming up. Sign up. Sorry, Bull, what were you saying?
You're right. I mean, it's like, G makes a great point well, my point was that the Players Union hasn't negotiated strong enough. They should. It's insane that baseball players and basketball players get guaranteed money, and football players who play the most physically dangerous, physically taxing sport don't. It's nuts, and that's partly on the players. And I guess if I was a low-life billionaire, I probably wouldn't do it either if I didn't have to. I would hope I would. But, like, in this particular situation especially, like, you're right. Like, if he never plays again, then he doesn't get his benefits. He doesn't get his health insurance.
He doesn't
get
health
pension.
insurance.
And, like, do you have any faith that the Bills owner is going to do the right thing? I think it's more likely they'll say all these things and then never do anything.
Well, this is why I say, though,
the
the power of the fans should not be underestimated. The fans last night accounted for $4-point-something million for this man's charity.
Yeah.
We know what is right, and we know what should be done. Asking or expecting the league to voluntarily take themselves and their billion-dollar corporation to that point is not going to happen willfully. They're not going to do it.
It's not going to change until the owners are forced to change. And
You're right.
Force change at the bargaining table, and you get to the bargaining table by striking. But
the players haven't stood together on that. They need to next time.
We say that every time.
But they should. But it's easy for us to say.
But the same fans that are saying they should, after 3 weeks and no football, are going, all right, enough already. Millionaires arguing with billionaires.
It goes right back to that same narrative.
No, but I talked to Browns players before this last agreement, and they said, we're serious this time. We don't want a 17th game, and we don't want this, and we don't want that, and we're going to – and then they just roll right over.
Soon there's going to be 18 games.
I'm going to be real with you, man. During this last pandemic, you know what we found out? We done gave business owners everything. They get tax breaks. They get to choose where they want to have their money. They get all this stuff.
They don't pay any taxes.
They ain't paying no taxes.
The NFL, by the way, does not pay taxes.
And so what I'm saying to you is, you wonder why you can't find nobody to go work. Because you've been working people 60 hours, getting no raises, no health benefits. They're paying for money to just put gas in their car and go back and forth to work. And then you got the nerve to, I don't understand why no one wants to work for the same $12 that we've been offering since 1996. People are tired of that, bro. And it's the same thing with these billionaires. You can't make $1 billion and then say you're not going to give basic health care to the people who are dying to make you that money. It's as simple as that.
And the irony is baseball, you mentioned baseball and basketball have these guaranteed contracts. There's no sport on the planet, maybe hockey approaches it, there's no sport on the planet more
dangerous,
explosive, and dangerous.
It's
Every
17
single
car
play,
crashes.
there is a collision between 11 players on both sides.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Every play, 100 times a week, 18 soon to be times a year. It's unfathomable.
And G, you talk about health care. I mean, you think about you talk about people not working, and people are discouraged. You are discouraged from quitting your job to do something on your own and be independent because your health insurance is tied into your job, which should never be the case, which is crazy.
What a joke.
I pay, and that's what I did when I quit my job. I pay over $2,200 a month for my health insurance. Most people can't afford that.
No.
80% of people can't afford that.
But you're between a rock and a hard place.
Right,
You
but I
have no
decided
choice.
to do it because I was able to do it, but most people can't afford to pay $2,200. It's insane that I have one kid.
Lomas
what if you have
Brown,
3, 4, 5 kids?
Lomas Brown, who's a Hall of Famer, near 20-year career, won, I think, 2 Super Bowls, one with the Giants, one with the Bucks at the end of his career. I worked with Lomas very closely for years at ESPN. He told me once, and I can't remember I believe the monthly amount for his insurance was over $4,000 a month. And he said, now try getting something covered. Because the same things that they're willing to call now a pre-existing condition are pre-existing conditions because he got them with his blood for this organization. Yeah. And he told me, he goes, everybody thinks that, you 20 years in the league, you got this pile of money and you don't need to. He goes, it's not the case. He's still, he worked at ESPN. Now he's calling the games for the Lions on the radio. He's doing
got
other
it better
things.
Still than most people.
And he's got it better than 95% of the other players because he's a Hall of Famer.
Right, and better than most people.
It really is insane, and it's got to change, and it's up to the players. The fans can't get it changed. The owners aren't going to willfully do it. The players have to band together, and maybe this is the event. Maybe this is the cataclysmic event that they all rally around and they all come together and say, you know what? Enough is enough.
Because his mama was cleaning floors to get him in college. Now you telling me she got to go back to cleaning floors because he need 24-hour care? What kind of crap? Go ahead, McNuggets.
Let's hope he doesn't need 24-hour care.
Let's hope he doesn't.
All of that.
Cross my fingers.
But Bull, even if this player doesn't, we've learned that the risk is real.
Of course.
For every one of these players to be, if not in that situation where you're fighting for your life, situations like others that we've mentioned who have lost use of their limbs for their life.
That's right.
And can no longer pursue their dream as a career opportunity.
And G, good point on the thoughts and prayers. I'm sick of the thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, too many of those.
That's meaningless.
I want action from the
Yeah.
NFL.
No creative read here. I do have to mention that you can get 15% off on Built Bar at Built.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON15. They're full of protein and nutrition. No creative somber reader. That's just not the day to do that. We do have a couple internet comments real quick. Benjamin Sanders said he was at the Cavs game last night. After the second quarter, I said Spider would need 60 to win. Had no idea we'd see an all-time performance. Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse was electric. Chris Boswell said come back from being down 20. Stop it. Spider's the best. And then James Slade Did anyone remember the late Detroit Lions receiver Chuck Hughes, who died in the field during a regular season game in 1971?
I do
I'm
not.
familiar
I
with
remember that.
So.
I do not remember that, and I'd be interested to hear more about that because even I look at Adam Schefter as kind of a historian as much as he knows the league that has been the last 25 years since he's covered it. He didn't mention that. I've never heard of that. Not saying it hasn't happened, but
The only one
I don't
thought
remember
was Ray
it.
Chapman.
We're out of time.
Chapman was the only baseball player that's
Yeah.
ever happened. I never heard of a football player.
Thanks for listening.
Yep, we're out of
you
time.
tomorrow.
Hug your loved ones. Make it a great day. We will see you tomorrow.
Lots
at
of
11.
Browns tomorrow.
Lots
I
of
promise
Browns
we'll
tomorrow.
talk plenty of Browns. We got 4 guests, so be ready.
Talk all.